Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 8th meeting of the Auburn School Committee. Can I ask that you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We start with introductions. Down with Rose, please.
I am Rose Walker. I am from Ward 1.
Happy New Year. Dave Simpson, at large.
Brian Belknap, Ward 4.
Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Karen Matthew, Ward 3.
Katie Gronin, Superintendent.
Faith Fontaine at large.
Boyson, Ward 5.
Brian Carrier, Mayor's Rep.
Michelle McClellan, Assistant Superintendent.
Adam Hansen, Business Manager.
Anna LeBlanc, Student Representative.
Okay, welcome, everyone. Happy New Year, as I think Dave just mentioned. Let's move into communications. Does anyone have any communications they'd like to share this evening?
Yes, I did receive a phone call from Mr. Shields yesterday, I believe it was. I don't know if anybody else did, but he was concerned that we weren't teaching history to our students. So I reached out to Shelley Mogul, and she sent me an email verifying that we are teaching history at all levels. I know she did say they're in the process of creating new social studies units. Those are not completed yet, but she did assure me that we are teaching our students history at all levels, whether it be social studies or history. Mr. Shields couldn't be here tonight, but I have followed up with him with a phone call, and I will forward Shelley's response to him. So I just thought I should share that with everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I did. I received an email from Dr. Elias. Okay, you're here.
Okay,
Great.
I did too.
Perfect,
Yes,
thank you.
Oops, may I just ask, Dr. Elias, would you like us to share your concerns, or?
I'm happy to share them myself.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So at this point, or during public participation?
Yep.
Or when the item comes up on the agenda?
During public.
When the item comes up on the agenda? Okay, great, thank you. Okay.
Public participation is
No. Let me clarify. There's public participation for items not on the agenda, right. And then when the agenda item comes up, then
Then you
there's
have
public
opportunity.
participation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, can I get a motion for the consent
I have
agenda?
two
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Didn't realize you weren't done.
No,
Sorry.
that's all right. So a couple communication items. We have updated school calendar for meetings, and I won't keep passing it out. I'll just notify you when we have changes. And we'll keep updating our website on dates of meetings and the calendars and so forth. Why this is being updated is City Council, I think you had your calendar handed out Monday, correct, Brian?
Yes.
Right, okay. So when I met with the city manager on Friday to go over joint meetings, we will have a joint meeting on February 24th, that's a Monday, as a precursor coming into budget season. Then we have March 23rd, which we are required by charter to have a joint meeting about capital improvement program. So at that time, Adam Hansen and myself go over the CIP plan. So when you hear CIP, that's Capital Improvement Program, which is all of our maintenance, maintenance that needs to be paid through the city bond. And so, and then the next one is April 6th, which I had said, do you have one? Mm-hmm. Okay. April 6th was on your calendar, and I didn't know which date, so it's April 6th is the joint meeting to go over the proposed school budget. And then I had to make an adjustment on when City Council would vote on the budget due to making sure we were 30 days per charter. So May 11th, they're scheduled to vote on the school budget to set it to a referendum. So those are just some dates. Keep updating your calendar. I try to, as you see on the agendas, I try to put when upcoming meetings are, at least ahead. That's helpful. Right, so that you can say, oh, that's right, that meeting's coming up. The other thing is postcards will be going out in the mail by the end of the week or Monday, the latest, inviting folks to the January 22nd, 6 o'clock, update information on the new building committee, which has been on your agenda. So it's not a workshop for you. We're going to set up as if, Harriman's is going to go over with the public where we are with the new high school project, and that's on January 22nd. The last thing I want to tell you is just to let you know, we're excited to have Chris Piercy, who will be our new food service director. He will start on Monday. He has experience as a food service director in Massachusetts, and he's excited. His family is moving to our area, and he's really excited about menu development. He's very student-centered around getting student feedback about menus and items, and a lot of really good energy around food service. I do want to do a shout-out to Lewiston's food service director, named... say it again?
Alyssa Roman.
Alyssa Roman, who Lewiston was gracious enough. Alyssa came over and joined us for the interviewing of the candidate to give her expertise around food service and picking candidate to really help the interview committee, which I really appreciated her taking the time to do that with us. So Paula Roulard, who's our current food service director, on Monday will shift to the role of administrative assistant. So Chris was really happy about that because that gives him the background and knowledge as he kicks off working in Maine. Maine has different rules and regulations than Massachusetts, so this is a great partnership that they can do for the food service as well as working with Lewiston's expertise. And then Cheryl Cornelio, you noticed her email with the agenda. That is the person who's replacing Roz Walton. She was Adam's administrative assistant, so she's moved into the role of executive assistant for the superintendent. So we hope to hire for her position in the coming week. So we have a few changes, but everybody's working really hard and covering and getting the job done. So I appreciate that. So I just wanted to update those things.
Just one more update. The Merrick Ski Program started today. For those that aren't familiar with that, they bus kids, they pick up kids at the elementary schools at 1 o'clock, and they bus them over to Lost Valley. And I skied with my kids from 1 to 6. Hence the rosy cheeks. But it's great because we were there and saw tons of students from Auburn. It's a great program. The kids are out, and it's also Winter Kids Week. So lots of hours being logged there, but it's just a great program that kids get to go over to Lost Valley, learn how to ski, and then ski on their own afterwards. So just thought it's a great program we offer our kids.
Anyone else? All right, moving on. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda for this evening?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Motion is passed. Public participation. Public participation, I would ask that the public limit their conversation to a topic that is not on the agenda, and time will be given when that topic does come up, if there's something on the agenda you would like to talk about. Not seeing anyone leave their seats right now. We'll close public participation. All right. Student information. Anna LeBlanc is with us this evening.
I will say Emma did email me late this afternoon that were you going to tell them that she was not feeling well, so she was sorry she was missing this
She
evening.
wasn't at school today.
Yeah, she's upset.
So to start with the elementary schools, for the November-December highlights, Park Ave and Sherwood Heights have both been really working hard with their CLC programs. Fairview and East Auburn has new playground equipment. Walton now has a 3D printer, and a lot of the kids are learning how to use that, which is really nice. And Washburn had hosted their annual family harvest dance. AMS has had their craft fairs and their plays, and that's wrapped up. EL is working hard on their tiny house, and the marching band earned the silver medal in the Maine finals. RETC has school improvements, and they have a new photography club. And Franklin had 15 students qualify for the AccuPlacer test.
Thank you, Anna. Any questions for Anna? Thank you so much. Moving on, superintendent's report. Planning and Development, Adam Hansen is here tonight to talk to us about some solar energy savings opportunities.
I'm going to move to this table and invite Charlie Agnew.
I do want you to know that when we had the presentation at Finance Committee, so the Finance Committee has gone over this, Faith and Bonnie were there. We told him, please make it as concrete and understandable for us to get, because it is complicated. So Charlie, you did a good job of, giving that feedback, so no pressure. But it is an interesting concept, and I appreciate him being here to explain it.
I trust you can handle this.
Good, excellent.
Okay. Am I on? All right. Well, thanks for having me, Adam, and everyone. My name's Charlie Agnew. I work for Competitive Energy Services in Portland, and we've been retained by the school department to help evaluate solar, photovoltaic, and other renewable energy projects under some new legislation that was passed last spring.
Here, do you need another one?
So as you get this presentation in front of you, I'll just describe, we have a 35-person office down in Portland. We've been in business since 2000, advising our clients on all things energy supply related, and in this case, we're helping to find the lowest cost solar energy projects in the market, not only on behalf of the Auburn School Department, but a number of others who have participated in this process as well. So I'll just jump into what we're calling our solar consortium. It's really not just solar. We have also some hydro projects that have bid into this RFP, but overall the membership consists of the Auburn Public Schools as well as a number of others, Falmouth School Department, RSU 14 in Wyndham, a number of other school districts behind City of Portland, City of Augusta, City of South Portland. We also have Bowdoin College, Colby College, Husson University, LL Bean, Maine Community College System, Maine Maritime Academy, Nestle Waters, New Balance, Pratt & Whitney, Pride Sports, just to name some of these others that are participating in this RFP process. So that is relevant for you to kind of understand who is participating here. The RFP that we ran.
Charlie, can I
Yeah.
just excuse for just a second? Can
Absolutely.
you define the acronym of RFP? I think that's important to understand
Yes,
as well.
thank you. No more acronyms. The request for proposals. What we did was solicit offers from a number of different solar developers, and the RFP process I'm referring to is that RFP. So, thank you. This RFP we released back in September. We had our results in late October. We've spent a couple of months now going through those proposals. There were quite a few of them from just about 19 different developers and over 110 different projects that were proposed to be built here in the state of Maine. A couple key parts of that request for proposals that you should be aware of are that the Auburn School Department and all other participants as well would be retaining all of the renewable energy attributes that come with any of these renewable energy projects. So those would be yours to own. The projects were proposed to be built on all land and property that none of the consortium members own. So all these projects are going to be built in remote or privately owned parcels throughout the state of Maine, both in Central Maine Power Service Territory and Amera Service Territory. So nobody has ownership to these projects and the land that they sit on. One of the other key parts of this is that we were asking for a price for the electricity generated from these renewable energy systems that would be fixed for the entire term of the agreement, which is designed to be 20 years, which follows the legislation that I'll get into a little bit later. So those are a couple key aspects of this RFP process. We have done interviews with all of the top developers. We've negotiated certain terms within that, but those negotiations are ongoing as we await final commitments from all of you, the participants, to know who is interested in moving forward or not. Just to summarize some of the responses we received and participation, I'm on slide 6 here, which Adam's following along. We did get way more projects and capacity, renewable energy capacity, bid into this RFP than we had demand for within the consortium, about 3 times. So the nice thing here is we have a bunch of projects to pick from, and I'll get into a little bit later how we are selecting these projects. But the volume of responses was very valuable in the process, so we can pick what we want. But just to give you a sense of when these projects are going to be built, we have a handful of hydro facilities that are already constructed and operating, and essentially as soon as these agreements are signed would be capable of producing credits, so in calendar year 2020. The majority of the solar projects have some lead time in permitting, development, and construction, and most importantly, interconnection to the electric grid. And most of those projects are slated to be completed towards the end of 2020 or first part of 2021, just to give you an idea of the timeline of when these projects could be built. I had a nice map, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to skip over that. This is just a graphic or visual representation of where these projects are being proposed. The majority of the solar is all what we call a fixed axis for any of you kind of technology geeks. It's just a fixed rack where the panel is oriented to the south on a fixed angle. There were also some projects that have a single axis tracking system, which essentially they move east to west throughout the day. Overall, the responses that we received from these developers were in line with our expectations on price. The most important factor beyond price that we're evaluating is their spot in what we call the interconnection queue. And I promise not to get too technical here, but the connection between the solar project and the utility grid is a very important aspect of these projects. It's very much a limiting factor within our distribution network throughout the state of Maine, because really each of our individual distribution networks, one may be, for example, in the Auburn, Mechanic Falls area, each one of those can only really support one of the projects that we're looking or hoping that are developed. And so, the interconnection line or queue, if you will, has been flooded with proposed projects. And the very first person standing in line who's submitted an application to the utility has priority, and everyone behind them or that project is going to have a very difficult time connecting to the grid. Likely there will be distribution line upgrades or substation transformation upgrades necessary to put that power onto the grid. And so one of the primary evaluation points was where each of these projects was in its development stage and their queue in the interconnection line. So really, we're just trying to assess how likely these projects are to be completed.
Excuse me, where are you located in that queue?
Well, we're not. We're not a developer. We're providing guidance to Auburn and ran a solicitation to find developers who are, if that makes sense.
I mean, their organization is the middleman, I would call it.
Yeah.
You're a middleman to negotiate. So their company is going to facilitate it and make money off of this, obviously, and ensure that we're going to have a return on investment in what we invest in. So, because I had him explain that to me, well, okay, you have CMP, you have you, and you have us, and how does that interface? So they're the middle agent on the work.
So are you asking where Auburn is on the queue? Is that what you're?
Well, no, it just seemed like
Right.
where they
When
were.
we-
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
They're the facilitator.
The majority of the projects we've selected are, if they don't have a queue position, they are all the number one queue positions. I'm not sure if we have any that are number two or beyond that. So that's part of the value of having, we had such good responses that we've been able to pick the best ones available. The actual prices that bid in, we are still retaining some confidentiality. We've signed our own non-disclosure agreements with the developers. I am not trying to withhold information from you. We're happy to sign non-disclosure agreements and get you the exact pricing information sooner than later, but so that we can retain some ability to negotiate and ensure that we don't lose any of these projects that have bid in. I'm going to speak a little bit loosely about kind of the cost and savings opportunity here, but I think you'll find that is pretty satisfying as it is, but I'll let Adam handle that further. So just an update on where we are. We've done the interviews. We now know the value of this renewable energy generation for the calendar year 2020. So we're able to frame in some of the economics. Again, we are balancing kind of the development stage with price and putting together the best mix of projects. And I know the school department has, or public schools have, engaged some legal review of the agreement, which is largely what we're doing right now, reviewing the contract language that would need to be put in place to essentially buy the output from these solar facilities for the next 20 years.
You do have a page coming up this one.
Yeah, so I'll get into a little bit about the mechanics of how this is going to work or could work for Auburn Public Schools.
This explains what I was trying to get into
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, no, and this is important to understand. We envision a project opportunity where there's really no upfront capital investment for Auburn. There's a number of reasons why that is.
I just want you to restate that again. Could you make that comment again for me, please?
Sure. We do not anticipate that Auburn is going to purchase or finance any of these projects. There is no capital that's going into the project as we anticipate.
Okay.
What you will do is enter a long-term agreement to essentially purchase all of the output, the electricity generated by these systems. So you're committing to buying that output.
Long-term meaning 5
20
years?
years.
20 years.
20 years. Yep. These developers take that 20-year price commitment to a financial institution and then are able to finance, construct, and then they will own and operate this solar project over the life of that 20 years.
Is that 20-year term negotiable by any means, or is it pretty
No.
much anyone entering into this agreement is locked in for
That's
the 20 years?
correct. That's you know, since the legislation, this net energy billing legislation is defined as a 20-year term, where the agreement will follow that, for good reason. Yep. So once these projects are built, we had some legislation that was passed last spring, LD 1711, that essentially defines a value for a monetary value for the electricity that is put onto the distribution grid. So this project gets up and running, creates kilowatt hours that get put onto the local CMP distribution grid. The net energy billing rules create a credit, a monetary credit from each of those kilowatt hours that Auburn Public Schools can then direct to any number of utility bills. So in essence, your utility bill becomes the vehicle for these billing credits. And if you're still with me, you know, you're going to receive credits from that project, and through this agreement with a solar developer or multiple solar developers, you know, the way we've designed this will pay a portion of those credits back, and the difference between what you pay the developer and what you receive in the form of a utility credit is in essence your savings. So that's kind of an important concept to understand, and how this relationship is going to work. Any questions?
I have one. We talk about client and host for the projects. As most projects, most lifetime solar farms, 20 years. So if we lose farms, I see in the paperwork that you would seek to find others. Are we still locked in at that rate that we started off with, or are we going to be getting a new rate if we have to go to other? You've got 110. Say if we went with 10 of them at this rate, and say five of the folks' projects become no longer serviceable.
Yep.
And we have to seek other ones to make up for that energy. Are we guaranteed that same rate, or are we going to get hit with a higher rate later on down the line?
Yeah, there in that situation, there is no guarantee to the rate. What you will end up entering into is a contract with multiple developers, and each one of those contracts is going to be at a different rate. I'm going to talk to you about the weighted average rate of those contracts, and that's kind of the midpoint of what you'll pay. But yes, naturally, if you lose one of the low-cost projects, your average rate is going to go up. If you lost one of the high-priced projects, your average rate would go down. But that's a good question, and
Charlie, I'm gathering in the contract, they're going to have those type of things flushed out somewhat. Language around rate guarantee, because I think I read under, over, that type of thing.
each of the developer contracts will be at a fixed rate.
Right, but the contract we're going to go into is with you for 20 years, or there'll be a contract with each of the projects?
That's correct, the latter.
Okay.
There will be a contract with each of the projects.
Okay.
Yep.
So do we know going, and I know it's, if, maybe, what if, do we know where these projects are? I mean, it's nice to get one that's just starting off, got no problems, as opposed to getting one that's in year 19, all the panels have to be replaced, they're not sure they're going to go ahead, because we've addressed this already from the planning board side in bonding, bonds having to be purchased for this. So do you know ahead of time where we are? Let's say you pick 10 companies, and that's A, B, C, D, E, where they are in their project?
Yes, we do know that. All of these projects are new, and there might be only one or two that have a shovel in the ground.
Okay.
because they're waiting to hear what the investment level is to what they can build.
Yeah,
Right?
they
I mean,
really
they can't do anything until they have investors.
Exactly.
And we're considered an investor because we're going to be committing a certain amount of our credit towards the project.
Yes, thank you. Well done.
It's okay.
So, Charlie, if I can follow up on Brian's last question. Essentially, a project goes defunct and it just goes away. We have no further commitment to buy those credits because they're not being produced.
Yeah,
Is that
in
correct?
the 20-year agreement, you'll pay for a credit that's produced, and as a further extension of that, you actually have to receive that credit on your utility invoice. And if the project is not generating any electricity, you're not going to get a
Right.
credit, and you owe nothing to the developers. So it is all unit contingent, which eliminates any performance risk of the actual
That's- yeah.
hardware or equipment or project.
Right.
Yeah.
So part of our discussion is really saying, are we committed to being part of the investor group? We are not signing any contract with any projects. It's giving the green light to be part of that long group of city and schools to move forward with as an investor. But then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, I'm guessing, when the projects have been determined,
Yep.
depending on the investor's level of commitment with you.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I think you had said that we had to sign non-disclosure agreements before we could get the actual numbers, and I think that that would be something that's important to get when we're looking at this, just the specifics of it all,
Yeah, absolutely.
and probably sooner rather than later.
We're happy to provide that information. We've signed non-disclosure agreements with some of the developers, so we need to protect ourselves, but we can extend that to you as well. Yep.
I would ask, when are you looking for a final decision from this committee?
Yeah, well, my understanding is that you'll meet again on the 22nd, and we aim to have all of these agreements signed, if not by the end of the month, the first part of February.
Okay.
So part of January 22nd, to help you, Rose, is to have the Drummond and Woodsum attorney, who's not just working with our school department, but working with all the school departments to create, so that you guys, you understand your risk and your non-risk. So part of the 22nd was to have an executive session prior to that agenda item to have the attorney give feedback around that, and then you would come out and make your decision on whether you're going to support that or not. So you have, he's not the legal person, Charlie's not the legal person. Drummond Woods is working on this, obviously, to protect school departments if they're to sign on to this project. So it's all preliminary in that they need to know how many entities are going to be part of the pool. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Was the city given the same opportunity to look at this?
Yeah, so I did talk with the city several months ago before the RFP went out and discussed whether they would be interested in joining in, and they decided to do their own RFP around solar, and I believe they're reviewing that right now, and the council will probably hear something soon on that, I would think.
I think for me, I definitely would want more information as far as the nitty-gritty. Before we even say we're going to do something, I think the nitty-gritty might be important to know a little bit more, but like you said, to do all that, I would feel more comfortable.
And I think just thinking in my mind, if this same proposal was brought to the city council and our city council decided to go a different way, and we are looking at this proposal, that this is a great opportunity for collaboration between the school committee and our city council. So I'm just wondering why we wouldn't decide to enter into such a large decision in tandem together.
I would 100% agree. That was one of the things that we had discussed, all of us, was that collaboration was something that we wanted to participate with City Council and us. So it seems like there's some sort of disconnect, and I think I would want to know why.
No disconnect.
And just what the reasoning is, why the City Council decided to go one way.
Okay. Adam, do you?
Yeah, I mean, just to back up a little bit, we're beyond, we've done the RFP process, and Charlie's coming to us with this information. So this information wasn't brought to the city. The city was given the chance to get in on the RFP before it went out. And for whatever reason, in their discussions, they decided they wanted to do their own. I can't speak for them as to why that decision was made. But, part of the benefit of being part of this is we're in with all of those other big hitters, those big partners, to go after these savings. And so at this point, I don't think we can say, okay, thank you, but no thank you, and can we now hop onto something the city's already way down the road in? So I think that ship has sailed a little bit. There was no lack of trying to collaborate. There was a lot of discussion about it, and that was the city's decision.
I think that maybe even if we just get the reasons why you guys chose one way or another, that opinion and information would be very valuable to us.
Second, we may have, because I just think this is a very big decision that has been brought before us, right?
It is. It's a very big decision.
Absolutely, it's an enormous decision, and so we can hear little bits and pieces and parts and try to, glean from the notes that we're hearing and want to absolutely trust that we're being led down the correct path, but there just, I think, has to be a really thorough understanding of what we're entering into. What other states has this work been done in? Your company must be a national company. Are there other avenues and resources that we can look into beyond what you've provided with us here?
Yeah. To answer that directly, yes, we're not a national company, we're Portland-based.
Okay.
But we do work all throughout New England, which is the primary deregulated market in North America. So we did see these similar programs roll out in Massachusetts 6 or 7 years ago, essentially the net energy billing credit programs. And we helped the University of Massachusetts build some of the biggest solar projects that were ever built in the state. They are now reaping the rewards of kind of early entry into those programs, and we audit all of the credits that they receive on a monthly basis, and they've been saving upwards of $1 million a year since those projects were built. But to answer your question, we've been doing this for about 7 years in Massachusetts. Same thing happened in Rhode Island, so we did the same thing for University of Rhode Island, the City of Providence. We work for some of the larger private industries, Raytheon, New Balance, and City of Boston. I mean, I can provide more details about our credibility, but we've learned what happened in Massachusetts. The now director of Governor Mills' energy office is Dan Burgess, and he was hired out of Massachusetts, and all of these programs almost mirror the programs that were done in Massachusetts. So we've essentially built a team and a service, which I'll get into a little bit, but it's essentially a data service that supports the auditing process of these credits throughout the 20-year term of the agreements to make sure that they perform as we've presented to you and advertised. And so that's work that we're very familiar and comfortable with.
Yeah, I think I would just like to see the scale of the project, what's similar to what is being proposed to what has been done.
I mean, in comparison to Massachusetts, Rhode Island?
Yeah, just something compared to like what the project is proposed to us versus something that has already been done, and just what the results and comparisons are, like
Okay,
more
so
specifically.
nothing's been done in Maine. So
No,
you would-
but in Massachusetts, in
Massachusetts,
something
Yeah,
that's the same size.
like a school department, and how much did they save, and
Yep.
that type, like an
Like you had
example?
talked about the University of Massachusetts, and
Yeah.
those were some of the biggest projects. Well, that's great, but we need to see what it is on a smaller size for us.
Right.
Brian?
And I'll clarify.
I just said that, to add to what she was saying in the outlay, what we're looking at for cost coming out of our pockets right up front, or what will be needed from us.
Right. Right now, there's no funds.
I think
Well,
that's
right.
the part I asked you to
But that's
repeat.
part of the,
Yeah,
part of what we
There's no
brought up
additional
earlier.
capital.
right.
So Charlie, if I understand correctly, we wouldn't be paying these developers until the energy is being produced. Is that correct?
Well, not just the energy being produced, but actual receiving the credit
Right.
on your
Okay.
utility invoice.
So we would be paying them on the credits that we would be earning through this project. Is it-
Yeah, that's
It's,
fair.
use the example of, we get our Central Maine power bill.
Right.
Yeah, so let's, we can just use this example here where this project generates 1 million kilowatt hours per year, let's just say. Under LD 1711, the credit value that's established is 10 cents per kilowatt hour. The utility will then issue a $100,000 credit on your invoice. And you, let's say, for example, you contract with the developer to pay 9 cents per kilowatt hour generated from that project for 20 years. You pay them back 9 cents for the 1 million kilowatt hours. And in essence, your retained savings is the difference between the credits you received at 100,000 and what you paid back at 90,000.
So if there's no credits, then there's no additional,
There's no payment.
Yeah.
No, there's no payment.
So the way it's
I
designed
asked
is you're
the same
not
question. We
paying,
won't owe money.
yes.
No.
So at
We
any
either
rate,
won't earn a
we're never
credit,
going
we're
to
not gonna
pay
owe
more
more.
than what our, yeah.
Exactly.
Or it's only save or nothing.
right.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
That's how it's designed to
Either we'll
work.
save or we'll just pay what we would have paid. Okay.
That's exactly.
Yep.
You don't
that's
pay
exactly-
anything
Thank you.
until you're reaping the savings of it simultaneously. It's how it's designed to work.
So the credit rate is a good thing to understand for you folks and how that is designed. The credit rate that you would receive for those 1 million kilowatt hours is indexed to the standard offer supply charge, which is established by the Public Utilities Commission. It's essentially the electricity supply cost plus 75% of the delivery rate for a small general service customer. And the combination of those two things equal the total credit rate. That credit rate will change every year, but again, it's indexed to both delivery and supply costs for electricity. The rates that have been published for 2020, you see in this table here for a small general service account is 13 cents a kilowatt hour. The majority of the school department accounts are medium general service. They would receive a credit of 12.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And then there are some large customers out there that would receive 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So again, just to follow along the kind of the financial thread here, what you now need to know is what are we going to contract? What is the rate that we're going to contract at? So again, this is going to be a fixed price for 20 years with no escalator. The agreement that you pay for all of those kilowatt hours is fixed for 20 years, no escalator.
Now,
And
I'm sorry, I just have a question on this. There's CMP, which I know, which I'm familiar with,
Yep.
but these are all other supply companies?
Yep, I'm sorry. So there's really one other investor-owned utility in the state of Maine. That's Emera. They used to be called Bangor Hydro. And they have service territory that's Bangor North, and then kind of up in the Presque Isle area, they have a smaller portion of their service territory, which is kind of legacy called Maine Public. So there are different rates for different utility zones. The only one that's relevant to you is Central Maine Power.
So the number that we're looking at is the discount, not the cost, right?
What's important to you is the difference between the credit rate and what you contract with the developers for, if that makes sense.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
get
we're
there.
we're there. We're here.
Okay, I think
Just go
it's,
through it again,
I think
like,
it's very important
go
that you're
through that
asking this
page
question.
and what that's saying.
Absolutely. This
Okay.
page.
Yes,
Yeah, no, I haven't even done this page.
I know, that might help.
So the commitment level that we've picked for the Auburn School Department is based on your total electric load. And we've targeted a percentage of that. That's just about 75% of the total electricity consumption for your accounts, which are 2,700 megawatt hours per year, or 2.7 million kilowatt hours per year. That's historically what the schools have used. And what we included in the RFP for you folks is just an even 2,000 megawatt hours per year. And the reason for that is we never want to be in a situation where you're contracted for more credits than you can take credit for on your utility bill, if that makes sense. So what you don't want to do is agree to pay for more credits than you have in utility liability, more money. If you agree to buy those million kilowatt hours at 9 cents and pay the developer $90,000, but your utility bill is only $80,000, you're going to be out $10,000, and CMP is not going to write you a check. So,
Yeah. So then at that point, we'd be paying more, so we
Exactly.
really need to be
So we
cognizant
need to be
of
conservative.
We
what
wouldn't be paying
use.
more, we'd be paying for our
Well,
electricity.
for the
Right.
extra, yeah.
The key is to not overcommit
Rated
and
for.
over-purchase
Exactly.
credits that we can't use.
Yep.
That's right.
And that's why they've targeted the 75%.
So yeah, so we've picked 2,000 megawatt hours per year as the starting point. We've been using the differential between the credit rate, which today is almost 13 cents, that 12.7 cents. The savings per megawatt hour is, going to be, I can tell you, but probably between $30 and $50 per megawatt hour. So you multiply that out by, 2,000, order of magnitude savings will be between $50,000 and $100,000 per year. And the variable is going to be what that credit rate is year to year. So I can tell you what it would be in 2020, but again, none of these projects are, well, except for a couple of the hydro projects, those are the only ones that are actually going to be producing credits in 2020. The relevant number for you would be, 2021. So we've been trying to be conservative in our savings estimates by assuming $20 to $30 of per megawatt hour in savings looking out to 2021 and for the term of this agreement, the 20 years. So we're thinking probably about $40,000 to $60,000 per year in credit savings.
I think that what I'd like to look at too is, we've talked about the anticipation of 2,700 megawatt hours. I'd also like for what we'd use, correct?
The district consumes 2,700 megawatt hours.
Okay, so I would like to look historically, a year, like for the past 3 years, and really anticipate that will cover what we need.
Sure, that's a really good point. I mean, what none of us can do is sit here and say we know what the loads are going to be 20 years from now. I can tell you a couple of the trends we've seen as you guys have installed cooling systems in some of the schools. That's been a big driver of an increasing amount of electricity consumption. We, Competitive Energy Services, see the future where we need to decarbonize our energy grid and reduce the amount of carbon we're emitting into the atmosphere. We see actually electrification as being the answer to that. So more vehicle charging, more electric vehicle charging, changing from gas to electric heat. So that's really the only way that Auburn or anyone can reduce the amount of carbon is you change everything to electricity and then buy all of your electricity from renewable sources. So certainly there could be technology advances that, the next LED, for example, that may reduce the amount of electricity that you consume, and we do need to anticipate that.
There is a couple of big significant, like the new high school.
I was just about to ask,
Well,
how have you factored in the new EL?
I mean, that's going to be energy efficient. We know that there are old electricity and that sort of thing that's being processed there. So that might make a significant difference. And I guess my other question relating to that is if we pay for more credits, so say we pay for, the credit on 2,700, but we actually use 2,500 because of the new building, then would we I mean, they're not going to write us a check back if we pay more, or like, how does that work?
Exactly. So
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
we do need to anticipate what the new school, I mean, there's been some engineering work already done on this. I'm very cognizant of the new high school project. We've talked about, certainly energy efficiency being built into that project, but larger footprint and different programs that are not likely going to drive down consumption overall, certainly on a per square footage basis.
And Charlie, I believe the projections you're using here are based on the current high school's output.
That's correct.
And we know that the new high school, though it'll be designed more efficiently, will use much more electricity than the current if you look at the difference in size and what's going to be going on there. So we won't be using less kilowatt hours there, although it will be more efficient. It'll be, the whole building will be air conditioned for one thing compared to the current one, which isn't. So that's a big driver there.
Is there a possible way, like, is there any scenario, like in Massachusetts or Vermont, like you said in the Northeast, that where you operate, that we can see like a new school and, similar to what our situation is? Is there any out there, just to see what that anticipated increase is? Do we need to pay for 2,900 kilowatt or megawatts? What sort of things do we anticipate? Because if we want to get the max on our credit, so we need to try to anticipate all of that. Like, if we can get more credits because we can anticipate we're going to use, whatever, 10% more than we use now, then we want to pay for that. But then it's that fine balance of wanting, not paying enough to paying.
Yeah, we don't want to lose.
So,
Yes. Right. So,
if I can, Faith, before, I think it might be helpful if I just
Yeah, go
jump
ahead.
ahead a little bit, because we've sort of gotten to this point. One of the things that Drummond Woodsum is doing right now is looking into whether the new laws place some sort of restriction on whether new state-funded school projects can utilize opportunities like this. They're not clear yet on that. There's a chance that we may not be able to include the new high school. It's bizarre. They're looking into that right now. They should have the answer before she comes to talk to us in 2 weeks.
So if that's the case, then we should probably get an estimate of what we use minus the high school, because that is going to make a significant impact
Yes.
to that.
The other thing they're doing is they're studying in depth our usage and working on a spreadsheet with detailed projections. And that will also be ready before they come
Thank
to meet
you.
with us. You're welcome.
That's a very important point. Not to diminish it, but this number can change. Like, you guys can be as aggressive or
Right.
conservative about how much savings or how little savings you want to target. That's no problem. And certainly in a situation where, you think electric loads will grow into the future, we're very comfortable recommending 75%. Yeah, of existing. Yeah.
Yeah, so just so I understand this completely. So if we do the 2,000, just hypothetically, that's 2,000 for the 20 years, correct? That number will never change?
Correct. The credits can be transferable. We anticipate they're going to be quite valuable and that others would be happy to take them, but
But so we will, right, but we'll decide a number before we sign the contract, and that will remain in place for the 20 years.
there's rights to transfer, but
Okay.
yes. Yep.
So say, we agree at 2,200 and we actually use 2,900. That extra 700 will be at our regular rate that we would pay with CMP? So we're not going to get credits on that extra 700, correct? We're just going to get the credits for the 2,200.
Yeah, and I didn't really make this point yet, but everything you do with CMP now is going to stay the same. You're
Okay.
paying all of your
So that's what I
CMP
wanted to make
bills.
sure.
This is just going to show up as a line item credit on the
So
bill.
we're still saving, because
Yeah,
we're
I
saving
think what you're saying,
2,200.
Faith, is it's maybe some more savings we could have had, but
We
we
could have,
left
but I'd
on the
rather
table because we
undershoot
didn't
than
want to overshoot.
Lose, correct, okay.
Yes,
That's
you're
what I wanted to
exactly
make sure.
right.
Thank you.
Brian?
You said that they are transferable, but is it transferable to other RFPs or to other people that are signed on the project? Or could we transfer them to the city of Lewiston or the
Yeah.
city of Auburn or the city?
Yes, you could. You
Can we
could.
transfer it to the city council?
Yes.
So the agreement will be, the credits can be transferred, or the whole agreement could be assigned if you found somebody that, if you didn't want it and you could found somebody else that did.
So there's no restriction on who we could transfer or make a deal with? Is that right, Charlie?
The only restriction would be the developer evaluating the credibility of the entity that would be receiving the credits to make sure they were of equal credibility.
Sure.
Any other questions from the school committee? Or are you, anything else you want to add to your presentation tonight, Charlie?
I think it's important to mention the environmental attributes that go with these projects.
Yep, absolutely.
So for every unit of energy or 1,000 kilowatt hours or 1 megawatt hour that's generated, you'll actually have a renewable energy certificate or credit. We would abbreviate that as REC, a REC. And those RECs have value in the marketplace. So Auburn will have another potential revenue stream if you guys elect to sell that credit to someone else who is obligated to be purchasing those credits. The market for those is very strong right now, and essentially the saving, what we've talked about for credit savings, you could nearly double and more in selling the environmental attributes that go with these projects. That will not allow you to make any claims about any carbon reduction or greenhouse gas emissions reductions. That right is sold with the credit, but in the case where you choose to fund any energy efficiency projects, or whether you'd like to just put that savings into the general fund of sorts, that is another potential revenue.
So then there's two ways that we would save money. There's the discount for the megawatt, and then there's also, on top of that, the carbon credit, the REC credit that you were talking about.
Correct.
Can you talk briefly about what are the risks? What if the law changes? What if electricity prices fall through the floor? That sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So we talked about overcommitting. I think we hashed that out. Policy risk is another big one that, we could see some political win. We could see a new governor that comes in and attempts to overhaul the whole net energy billing program. That's always a possibility. One of the reasons we see value in the school department participating in this specific group is the compilation of end-use consumers, where you have companies and institutions across the political spectrum that would be very politically difficult to upend if a new governor came in and said, we don't like this program. It's just not likely that anyone could survive, flipping the economics on the University of Maine and community colleges, City of Portland, LLB, and Pratt Whitney, and so forth. So we think that's mitigated in this approach, rather than being in your own, a singular contract. One of the other things that's valuable is that Auburn will not have a contract with a single project. You will have a contract with 25 different projects. You will buy your proportionate share of output of all of those projects. So again, performance and developer risk is mitigated in that way. You're not going to have just one project. So, and you're not even going to have one technology. There'll be some hydro. So if we have some sort of prolonged eclipse or the sun stops shining, there'll be something there. So production, development risk I've covered.
If prices.
So prices for electricity, if, really the difference between the net energy billing credit rate and what we anticipate you'll be able to contract at, you'd need to see electricity prices drop by 40% or more for this to go underwater in essence. But the reality is you still have to buy 2.7 million kilowatt hours per year, so your overall electricity budget has gone down by 40%. So in a way, this is really just a hedge against escalation of prices in the future. And additionally, we have the renewable energy credits that could provide another revenue stream.
To what you said before, I just, about many different companies buying into it, the University of Maine, the Maine Community College, that's important to set the precedent, for these sort of projects, you know, with a new building and these new energy programs. I think that it's definitely something to start to get the ball rolling for other opportunities.
Thank you for that
Can
input.
you, if I can just have them address timeline, when are you looking for a decision and why do you need it at that time? And also, who else has committed at this point from that big group?
Yeah, we're assuming that essentially everyone is committed. There are a couple small participants that we think might drop out. We don't really know, but everyone in the consortium is committed.
Okay.
Yeah. There may be some small changes, like you may consider changing the 2,000 to 1,000 or 2,500, whatever you choose. But we are moving forward. The what was your next question? Timeline is we're trying to expedite this. We did, just as an example, we had one of our low bidding solar developers that put several project bids into the mix for us that we were anticipating. They were bought out by another firm who offered them a much higher price, and they pulled all of their projects. And so what we don't want is more of that attrition to happen. There is a lot of headroom between the agreement rate that we have and the billing credit rate, and some of these developers are seeking more lucrative opportunities where they can find them. And what we don't want is to lose these good projects while we have them. And, you know, I have a pretty high level of confidence that any singular entity would not find a better pricing opportunity than this in the marketplace.
Now, I'm sorry, to just talk about the state, the LD, I'm sorry, whatever it was. If there is a federal law that affects this, how does that change things significantly? Or maybe that's a question for later, but I know there have been other renewable energy credits, like for electric cars and that sort of thing. What if there was something to come through for alternative power? Does that make sense?
I don't know how to answer that. A portion of the reason to act soon is there is a federal tax credit that these developers will monetize. You cannot, but they will monetize that and reduce the project cost by about 30%, and that is going to start dropping down in the next years if that is not renewed. It doesn't look like it will be renewed. But in terms of the feds coming with any sort of either jurisdiction on what sort of energy projects can be built, I can't really comment on it.
So I think that had answered my question, that losing the tax credit federally will affect the project return.
It'll affect the price you would pay, yeah.
Now, with the new Edward Little building, you said that we're going to be using much more power because it's a bigger school. Now, again, I'm waiting for the meeting that we're going to talk about the whole building, but have we talked about solar panels? Has that been topic? Okay.
Yeah, they did. I know they did look at that back along before they settled on geothermal and decided the return on investment wasn't there for the solar to be on the building itself. So I know they did look at it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none?
Right, so part of this is getting you comfortable enough to move forward. So on January 22nd, we've gotten some of your feedback, and we'll make sure we have more information for January 22nd, so that you can feel comfortable saying, yes, move forward.
Because there's an expectation on January 22nd, from what I'm hearing from Charlie, is that they would like a decision so that they could, by the end of this month.
So it's not
essentially the next time
specifically
we
that
meet.
decisions are made now, it's from the
No,
workshop?
no decisions
Yeah.
made at this
Okay.
point. This was an opportunity for discussion, an opportunity to hear information, do exactly what we've just done, go kind of have a dialogue back and forth so that when a decision is made, it's a well-informed decision on our end.
So I'd just like to say two things. One, thank you for answering all my questions.
Thank you for asking them.
And two, thank you for all the work that you're putting into this, that we really appreciate this. And I think you're not only making an impact for us, but again, it's setting that precedent for the state.
Yeah, future generations as well.
Kudos to Adam. He's working very hard on this as well. So this is my job. I love what I do.
Yeah, well, we've worked with
Thank you.
Charlie for many years procuring our electricity pricing, so it made sense as a partnership to go after this together, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But I encourage you, any questions, to send them to Karen and I. So
Definitely.
if you leave this, you go, boy, I wish I'd asked this, send them to
Right.
Karen and I, and that will help inform our January 22nd meeting that,
So they can prepare.
Exactly.
Yes, so we are expected to make a decision on just January 22nd, but also you guys are going to be providing the tangible information that we've asked for as far as the pricing and what we can expect things to cost with or without the high school and all that, right?
Yeah,
The
and,
ingredient
the
here?
non-disclosures, like when do we have to sign those so that we can get the information about specifics?
But Charlie, when you say non-disclosure, I just want to be clear on
Yep.
this, because maybe I'm not getting it. You want to know how much the investors need to, how much the project's going to cost to build? Because that's what they are negotiating right now, I'm guessing, costs of projects.
That's correct.
Right.
The mix of
So it's not the
projects.
cost of,
What the cost is to us.
Right.
I guess
Oh, I get
what
it.
had
Okay.
concerned me was you said there's a dollar amount out there and you know it, but we don't know it until we sign a non-disclosure. So I want to sign it so I can hear it.
If I could recommend that, maybe we come to you with a sizing, the information on how many credits we recommend that you purchase and a not-to-exceed price.
Yeah.
You have to understand that if anybody drops out or if any projects pull out, that's going to change, there's going to be some minor changes to the cost that you'll commit
And
to.
Charlie mentioned not to exceed, so I think that's a key point, is when the attorney's here with us, she's going to be working on the wording for the vote, and I think not to exceed is going to be part of that vote. You may not be voting on 14.38 cents or whatever it is. It's more likely to be a not to exceed type of vote. So I think
we
it's
just
important
need
to know
ins-
that.
I think from what I'm hearing, we just need to ensure that there is protection on our end.
Exactly.
Savings as well, a positive impact on the environment, and making sure that all of those things are in alignment before we decide on a 20-year contract, which sounds to me is not negotiable whatsoever. It is locked in for 20 years.
We're essentially buying a really expensive house.
Right.
And that's right out of statute, the
That's statute.
20-year
Yes,
requirement.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, so those legality things will be good for next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the
All right.
20-year thing, I think I asked Charlie about 5 times. 20?
20 years.
Sure,
20 years.
Yeah.
I think you're going to want this for 20 years.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, both, very much. Very much, and thank you all for that discussion.
Thank you.
Great. All right, moving on, Michelle McClellan is going to update us on some truancy information.
Great. I have a handout I'm going to hand out. Well, that's what you do with a handout. So tonight, we're going to review the process that we use in the district to meet the requirements around truancy, but more importantly, the process we use to avoid truancy and to address truancy for any of our students. So also tonight, we'll talk about, so as a board, how are you informed about this process, and where along the process are you informed of any students who are involved in this situation? So first of all, I thought it was important to kind of go over definition. And you will hear and have heard about absenteeism. And absenteeism that you've heard about so far has been talking about chronic absenteeism. And the definition that I've written here for you is that chronically absent students are students who are enrolled for 10 days, at least 10 days, and are absent for more than 10% of those days enrolled, okay? And a key component is that it counts both excused and unexcused absences. So any time a student is absent, whether they're going to a doctor's appointment or they're sick or the family's going on vacation or we don't know why, that goes into the chronically absent measures. And that measure is used, and you'll hear about it, for school accountability. That's when you hear about that measure. It's not a student-specific measure that we're keeping account on, not for that purpose necessarily, but you'll hear about that as a board when we're talking about student data, for example, or a report on a school, how a school is performing. Okay? What we're going to talk about tonight is truancy, and that I think you're more familiar with in your own experiences. So that's when a student, I've given the definition there, when a student, there are two categories. When a student is in elementary school, at least 7 years of age, or the law just changed, if a student is enrolled into preschool or kindergarten or first grade before they turn 7. So if a parent chooses to enroll a child in school and has not completed up to 6th grade and has unexcused absences of 7 full days or 5 consecutive days, that's one category of truancy, okay? And then for our older students, that's 6th grade up, it's 10 full days or 7 consecutive days. And again, those are unexcused absences. All right? So we're talking about unexcused absences when we're talking about truancy. That's the more typical thing I think we think of as our own school career, hopefully not, or as a parent, again, hopefully not, that you're dealing with. But if you are, we're talking about those unexcused absences, okay? And then that final bullet I put on there, where chronically absent is a school accountability measure. This is more about parent accountability. Parents have an obligation, according to the law, to make sure their child has an educational program. So whether that's homeschooling or whether that's in public school, charter school, or private school, wherever that may be, they have a responsibility. So the truant laws are aimed at making sure that parents are accountable, they understand that they have that accountability, and then also to ensure that the schools are monitoring that. They're following a process to ensure that all students are accounted for in our district and that they're attending. Okay? I'm going to pause for a minute. Questions on that? Yes, Pam?
Question. So how long do you wait before you call the parents or call the home?
We're going to talk about that on the other
Okay.
side of your paper.
Right on the mark.
So
Okay.
hang on to that question if it doesn't get answered completely for you.
You may have already answered this, but
Sure.
what is the definition of unexcused? And who makes the determination?
Yeah, okay. There is a definition of unexcused, and we have that in our policy specifically spelled out. And so an unexcused absence is, most typically is when we don't hear from a family, to be quite honest. That's the most typical unexcused absence, when a child doesn't show up and we don't know why. We have a robocall that goes out on all students, just so that you know, if you haven't already heard it. If a student doesn't show up to school, we have not heard from a parent. So we let them know, we haven't seen your child, we haven't heard from you. So, all of a sudden the phone starts ringing, I'm sorry I didn't call you, and we hear from the majority. For those parents that we don't hear from, it would go into an unexcused absence.
Do we have a percentage of students that are truant in our district?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Are you able to share that, or is that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Let me go through this. I can give you some numbers afterwards.
Okay, yep, that's fine, thank you.
And Rose, hang on to that question so that we can make sure that we get it. Okay, great. Good. Other questions about the definitions? Okay. All right, great. So let's talk about the process. Go ahead and flip your paper over. You know what? Maybe if anybody wanted a copy, Adam? I know that. Okay, so here you have just a little flow chart that maybe will help you see what transpires in our schools. So once truancy is identified, and we talked about that in the definition, correct? So once truancy is identified, the superintendent needs to be notified, and the parent needs to be notified as well. And in that parent notification, there's a meeting scheduled. So there's a template of language that just talks about your child is not attending school. Here's the number of days that they've missed, and you have obligation by law. And so we'd like to have you come in, and we'd like to talk about any interventions that we can come up with to come up with a plan to address your child's participation in school. And parents are involved in that. If appropriate, the student is involved in that. Any adults at school who are appropriate, a teacher, a counselor, the principal, sometimes the school nurse, are involved in those meetings. And they come out with a written plan. Just like we do with academic interventions, we have interventions around attendance. So you can see that. So the parent notification goes out, the meeting scheduled, the parent the two choices at that point is the parent either attends or doesn't attend. But other than that, the meeting goes on and the plan is developed, whether the parent is in attendance or not. It's a little tricky, but that's what is happening in our schools.
And that's when the parents don't show up, like if they don't come as part, that was their choice to not come. Okay.
Yes, Rose? Nope. Okay. Right. So if the plan works, the intervention works, and the truancy is mitigated and attendance increases, then great. If not, if the truancy continues, the second notification is going to go out. And you can see, same process, right? The meeting is held, whether the parent comes or doesn't come. And again, the plan is written, shared with the parent, sent home to the parent with a letter around that. Continues to a third notification. So in our district, we use a 3-notification process. Brian, do you have a question?
Yeah, question for you. How much time lapse between each notification?
Really good question. This process can take over a few months, or it can be very quick, depending on whether the student comes or not. If we have, say, something that's been going on for a year and we've been tracking it, the next fall we might be really hitting it very early on and very quickly to try to move that situation.
So if we meet the second time, everything gets fixed and they start attending and then they suddenly go back and, start missing again, it just starts the process all over, right?
Yeah, it doesn't start at the 10 days are already established. So once they are identified as truant, they remain in that category. They don't go back to go or something, if you think about that analogy. They would continue for that school year to have the plan reinstituted and the meetings again.
Would that be 3 more meetings again? Would it be restarted, or would you already be in the process, and let's say you had 1 more, you've already done 2?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, you'd stay, they're in for that school year.
okay.
So once you're truant, you're truant.
That school year, yes.
Right, you stay within the steps.
Okay.
And that's just within each year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then it happens until June, that there's this issue. Come September, it's a clean slate?
And yes, in most cases. However, we will accelerate that. So I can think of examples at the high school, for example, where there's been a history of truancy, or at least not attendance that's become truants in 1 year. I'm working with the assistant principal, and we know in June that we're going to be watching and monitoring very early on, and we're going to move very quickly. So we might not, if we see an absent, if it's the first time through, we may not jump right on the second, we have an unexcused absent, if it's the first time around, but if it's somebody who has a history, we're going to be on it the first time. So, Brian, yes?
I just had a quick question, and I'm maybe thinking old school, at what point does it start affecting the student's ability to move on? Is it, you're supposed to have 187 days. At what point, how many days do they miss that you say, okay, you're looking at summer school, you're looking at not being able to move? Is there a specific date?
So there isn't a threshold of that because we're moving kids on, we're looking at what their capabilities are and moving on, whereas it used to be more of a, if you don't come to school, you're not going to move on. It's a little bit different category, but we are watching that because that, for a lot of our students, particularly when they get older to the high school level, we're saying, you don't have credit. It becomes kind of the natural result of you not being in school. You're not on track to graduate, and we want you to be on track to graduate. So we have to come up with a plan for you, whatever that is. And then it starts to flesh out even broader, like what's the right program for you to make sure you're on track for graduation. Katie?
I was just going to add, sometimes in the plan is they're going to pick up work. The plan often includes how we're going to make up the academics.
Yes.
Because some of the students can make up the academics and can do school at home. They just have a hard time getting into school. So it depends on the student and the need and what's going on.
Right.
I guess from what Brian said, that at what point are they held back or retained? I know that in the elementary levels, because I work in Lewiston, that it's the parent's choice whether there's a recommendation, at least in elementary, that it's the parent's choice. But then when it gets up to, the high school levels, then there's a certain amount of requirements for credits to, yeah.
That's exactly it.
So I think there's multiple pathways then that we're trying to offer students once they reach that sort of high school level.
That's it, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Okay, so we've gone through this, the school has gone through at least three meetings, because when we see this as three, there's often more meetings going on. Any of you are in schools or have been involved, there are more meetings. It's not 1, 2, 3. It's a matter of what do we need to try to do to engage this child. So it's not just meeting the law, it's attempting to engage the student in school and the family. So, but if we get to that point where it's not working, it's not having the desired effect, then the school is going to contact me, and I'm scheduling a meeting with the family. And I have the right, according to law, to have the local prosecutor there. And about a year and a half ago, I met with the the district attorney, Robinson, and he was very willing to start coming to our meetings. In fact, wanted to come to the first meeting that they were attending with me. We're going to have that first meeting tomorrow, actually, because I think in Auburn we try to work very directly with our parents. It's about trying to hear and listen and come up with a good plan versus a heavy-handed fist. That's not necessarily the best approach with families that are often experience a great deal of trauma and a great deal of stress in their life already. So, and we've had really good results in that approach to a certain degree. And so now here we are. We're going to meet with the district attorney just as a example for you tomorrow on a situation. So when that happens, we make sure that parent gets that letter. So we make sure that it's either sent certified, and someone's hand delivering. And that's where we have a great relationship. Deputy Chief is here in the audience with the Auburn Police Department, and our SROs will deliver that letter for us to make sure that it gets there and that the parent understands what's happening at that point. It's not just a letter, certified, signed, what's this? The SRO does a great job of helping parents and understanding exactly where they're at in this process and what could come.
Do we have any information on how these procedures are effective? Like, at what
Indirectly,
point?
yes,
So if
I
they
would
get
say
to one, the second parent notification, and it works, it's effective, and, they continue to not be truant, like, how many cases get to step 3 and et cetera? Maybe that's the percentage that
1,
I'm
2,
asking
and
for.
3, I don't have that
Okay.
readily, but it would be interesting to look at how many actually reach me.
Yeah, and I think that would be something that's important to note for for the truancy officer, and for how effective these processes are, these plans, and all these things that we put time and money and resources into, to how effective that is.
So if I'm hearing you right, Rose, is it that we have these step 1 meetings, and the 90% of the time we have step 1 meetings and it doesn't work? So then we move on to step 2 meetings and 80% of the time it doesn't work. Would it be more effective? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
To sort of, where are we getting the most positive effect? I mean,
Yeah,
do
to
we need to get
see-
to step 3 quicker?
To see if these plans are working.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, how can we rethink that?
Yeah. Let me go through this, because I don't want to lose the
Michelle
flow.
is the truancy officer, just so
Okay.
yeah,
Just so
everybody
you're
knows her
aware.
role
Yeah.
is the truancy
Unlike
officer.
Lewiston, who has somebody who's
Sorry, thank you.
who's dedicated
Superintendent,
to.
yeah, the assistant superintendent does all the hats.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
under the
which-
law.
You're amazing, thank you.
That's kind of to say. You're kind. No. But I do want to think about that some more. So if, let's say I have the meeting and the parent attends and truancy decreases, attendance increases, that has been the vast majority, at least as somebody said, it might have been you, Brian, at least for a period of time. It will increase, and we'll right the ship somewhat. Then we continue with monitoring, we continue with discussions, meetings as needed, making sure that they have what they need. If a parent attends and it doesn't improve, then that's when we make referrals. Anytime in the process, a referral can be made to the Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS. So anytime along here, if it warrants a referral to DHHS, schools are making that, and I will certainly make a call if it reaches me at that point about neglect, potential neglect. A referral to the Auburn Police Department can be made at that point. If there's a clause and I'm going to just keep moving across, in the truancy law that says if the parent does not attend and truancy continues after the 3rd day of absence, we can go directly to the Auburn Police Department and hand over. When we do that, we hand over our evidence and the case, and then they make a decision about whether that goes to the prosecutor or not.
I was just about to ask, what is the Auburn PD's role in this? Now that I've got this name, I've got this case, what is the Auburn PD's role?
Yeah. They make a determination at that point whether they're going to push the case further for prosecution. And that point, that would go through the DA and the court system. There's a fine associated per day, and that's in the letter that they receive. They know about that's a potential. There are other creative things we hear about all the time. Somebody was just telling me, I think it was Dr. Doris and I were talking about it, and sometimes judges get creative and they say you can't go for your license until you're attending school, or something like that. Where, Mom, you have to put the Nintendo, hand the Nintendo over or something. Whatever it is, they get creative in those things. But we haven't had any situations that have gone that far at that point. Your role, you'll see, is you'll be notified if we have a student. I will report that during communications that I have a case and I have a situation that we're working on, and we've gone through. Now you'll know what's gone before when it comes to you, and that we're at the point of working with the district attorney or the police department.
do you have information for us, sort of a percentages of where you are at in different, so say for a truancy is identified, how many students do we have right, and I think Rose asked the question, how many students do we have right now that are identified as truant? How many are on second parent notification step? How many are on third? Do we have information as far as how we're getting?
No, I don't have information on those second, third steps. We don't track that in that way, again, because sometimes, I think of Franklin School, for example, they may have multiple parent meetings along the way and multiple parent notifications. And I could say that about any of the schools, but I'm just using Franklin because truancy is, or non-attendance, I should say, is an issue there for some of the students as they're working through their school program. So we don't have a way to track that per se, but I'm going to think about it. In terms of the number that I have been involved with this year, I've been involved with 4 cases this year.
4?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I know you were talking about the high school, and that's an issue, and that's also like student accountability as well as parent accountability, because they're older, so there's, but what about the little guys, whose parents, who aren't going to school, but it's not, obviously they can't get there. Is that when you start implementing DHHS or social work, or, because obviously there's a bridge that needs to be gapped there?
Excellent. So one of the ones that I've been involved with, just using it as an example, an early elementary school student who we did just that. We talked about what support's needed in the home. We started off with, what are you using for alarm? Because it was mom not getting up.
Okay.
It was mom not getting up. And so where's your alarm? What do you do? Okay, if we're going to call you. One of the staff members said, I'm going to call you at this time. If the student is in the school. Not wait until the robocall. We're going to call that earlier, right? Then we moved into another level of a social worker. We set up counseling, family counseling. Not the student counseling, but the family was going to participate in family counseling. So those types, just exactly what you said, Pam. And then there were other pieces as well, incentive programs for the student, both at home and at school, that we worked on, as well as an academic support piece for that student. So those are examples.
Well, I just was saying that we have parents that will call and say, can you send the school resource officer to get my child out of bed?
Yes.
No.
We have.
So then we have to have a discussion on that, and Tim can attest to that. Yeah.
Principals who are traveling out.
Right, going to homes.
The homes.
Yeah, when the
Katie's
kids
been to
knock on the
homes, I've
door.
been home.
Yeah,
I've been to home as assistant superintendent.
She's also the homeless liaison, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but we do track the data every month in our administrative meetings to review our daily attendance rate, our chronically absent rate, our office referral rates as part of our positive behavior intervention supports. So it is part of their school improvement plans right now, is making sure their daily attendance rates are at 95% or higher. So we're tracking all that data, and you'll get some of that data at retreat on Saturday.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of my questions.
Exactly.
I said track the percentage fluctuation and see what's there. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
For students, now please remind me, the state law is that students do not have to be enrolled until they are 7 years old, correct? So are these truancy being recorded for up to 7 years old, or are they not recorded?
So just in the last legislative session, there was a bill that did pass through and is enacted in law as of September. And what it says is it doesn't change the compulsory age of attendance, which is age 7. But what it says is if a parent chooses, and that's why that kind of clunky wording is in here, if a parent chooses to enroll their child prior to age 7, then they are subject to this accountability.
And after the age of 16? How are we tracking after the age of 16?
It goes right up through.
All the way through?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they are enrolled in a program, it's tracked regardless. Okay. The other question that I had, when you talked about your 4 cases and at what point it's reported out to the school committee, how often has that happened historically?
This we're instituting now.
Okay, so this is brand new.
Yeah, we're instituting this
Ms.
now.
Gritty's brand new?
Not the process, informing you
Oh.
as a school committee member.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Pam's question or comment around the age of the student is critical. So my question, and I'm going to have a bunch of them because,
Okay.
so do you wait till day 7 to intervene on a first grader?
Great question.
Because, and I want to add on to my question with a response. My guess is the teacher has a great understanding of what's probably going on with that kid, and what resources are we giving the teachers to address this problem in a proactive way, because it has to be reactive. They have to meet the criteria. Versus if my kid doesn't show up at EL for 5 days in a row, and there's probably saying, good, Simpson's home doing something productive. It's indifferent. Because, a junior or senior in high school can self-protect. These younger kids, so the first question is, do we wait till the end of that period of 6 or 7 days to do anything? And do we utilize the information of the classroom teacher to really form up an individual intervention?
Teachers critically involved in this, and this is where the interplay between these 2 definitions. Okay, we start with, truancy is a subset of chronic absenteeism,
Right.
correct? You see how that plays. So we have spent, particularly at the elementary, yes, Sue, you're here. We've spent time over the last, probably 4 years, 3-4 years, really looking at the how we're intervening early, and not just what we're doing, but how we're interacting with the student and the parent. So we've worked with Count Me In, and it's an organization that's associated with a national organization, Attendance Matters, and on how schools can increase participation and reduce their absenteeism. That's a long way around to get to what I'm answering for you. I'm getting there, David, I promise you. And that is that teachers will call when a student is absent if we don't know why. Well, certainly the robocall goes out, that's a given. But teachers will call and say, hey, Susie isn't here again today. She wasn't here yesterday, or she wasn't here. I was just wondering, do we miss her? We're wondering what's going on with her. Is there anything that I can do? And it's not a, I noticed she was absent.
Right.
We're not asking our teachers to have those kinds of relationships with parents, and plus we want to send a message. The first call is not from the principal saying, you're absent, your child's absent, where are they? But really in a proactive way to reach out. And if that continues, another call could go from the teacher, might go from another adult in the school who has a role in that child's life. And so it's trying to say, oh, Johnny, your friend Johnny was on the playground asking about you. Those types of things. And then, of course, if there's ever any concern, if the teacher knows of a family situation that they have concern about, that's where they may or may not make referrals to either somebody in the school, or if it reaches a certain threshold, other agencies.
Well, one of the biggest challenges at the elementary level is parents calling their children out. So it goes down as excused.
Yeah.
So often, meetings and conversations are, boy, they've been out, well, they're still sick, or they have well, maybe we need to have a meeting, and, maybe we need to touch base. So some of the frustration at the elementary is they get that robocall, they call and say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to call you, they're sick. And so if we see patterns, the teacher starts to say, okay, and then when the student comes in, I know I wasn't here because my mom didn't, or whatever. So there's a lot, like you said, the classroom teacher really knows what's going on. Yeah.
Okay, so there was one other question that I had before, and I forgot until you just said that, was that at what point is it considered an unexcused absence? If a student is unexcused until 9 o'clock and then they come in, is that affected, or that is recorded by truancy, or is it, no, just kidding, you were here?
Chronically tardy versus.
Okay, so is there a plan similar to this for chronically tardy?
If you say similar to this, meaning truancy, no, because it's not required in law. So this is a response to that. Is there a plan to respond because of that chronic absenteeism piece? Yes, because they're missing instruction,
Yeah.
right? So we want them there, we want them participating. In terms of the law, no, that's not gonna count in a truancy situation, but it is important, and chronic absenteeism is where we would pick that up.
So the other thing I just wanted to say as a point of view of an educator, that I 100% appreciate the understanding that the district and that teachers need to be involved in it, and that that connection is validated in the process. And I guess my other question is that are the classroom teachers involved in the next step, step 2, step 3, or is it out of their hands and now it's in your hands?
No, absolutely. Where the first time that the teachers aren't involved in the process is when the meeting comes to me.
So yeah, I was going to, along with that, when do they, because they're the first person, they're the ones who know that child better than anybody, because they're with them. So are they in the initial phase of that?
Every step along
Every
that
step
way.
of the way, okay. Is that what you?
Yeah, I think a call from the teacher
Every
versus
step.
a robocall at the first step might feel better too. And this is a really good process, and it's great that there's only, you said 4?
4.
Which is fantastic. That's fantastic.
Especially with them.
So I think this is really.
I think we have truant students, and we have
Right.
truant students with some significant absences. What you also have is some really dedicated professionals in our school who are creating plans, who are following up on plans every day with students. If I called any of the assistant principals at the high school and asked about any one of their students who is not attending, they will tell me about that student and what's going on. They will tell me specifically about that student and what's going on. Their grades, their interest, their home situation, where they're living or not living anymore. They will recount to me a story. It won't be, oh, let me get back to you. So they're very involved.
I think that's great. I mean, honestly, I think it's wonderful, that collaborative piece, because for you to get called, it's like when I'm at the hospital, I don't call the doctor unless it's the last, I've done everything I need to do, and now it's like, okay, I need help. So.
Yeah, there's a shift in that truancy piece of when are they going to get the fine? When are we taking them to court? I don't know the data on that. When you asked about how effective are these steps, I would have a question about the effectiveness of the fine.
Right, it wouldn't.
Okay, yeah.
Because many of these parents won't be able to afford the fine.
Right.
and
I
then-
just about to.
Right.
When you're finding somebody who's already under stress about
Exactly.
multiple factors, it's probably not going to be the thing that turns it around.
And we do often invite a nurse to these type of meetings, because it's often can be medically. So having the nurse kind of be there to talk about it, sometimes parents will say, well, you can call the doctor and see if there's something more. So it's not just, it's anybody who can help support the resources. A lot of the students are referred to counseling, to our social workers, so a lot of the kids and families, so the wraparound services, we make sure that the administrators and guidance counselors have those resources, so when they're in meetings, they can say, we need to tap this. With the homeless part, Michelle does a lot with collaborating with the city around apartments, so that whole rental. So when it's, okay, well, they're absent, now we're hearing they're homeless, now we're hearing they're struggling, what other wraparound services can we, the student's not attending because they don't have a home and the families are struggling. We have to support the families.
You can make referrals to case management.
Oh, yeah.
We'll set up case management for students, but for families to help with the situations that are happening in their home that are overwhelming and causing, these sorts of situations to result. And then just finally, I think somebody asked a question about what if they're calling their child out. oh yeah, they're sick again, oh yeah, they're sick again. We will ask for doctor's notes. We will say, you know, it's been this many times, it's not just a few, it's this many times. We have concerns as well. We would like to see some verification in terms of the doctor's note when you've gone, because they'll say that. Sometimes people will say, oh, I got to take him to the doctor, he has a strep. And that could be very much the case, but we want to make sure and verify. If it's a chronic situation that's not been substantiated, the teacher's saying, I'm not really sure about that, we can substantiate.
Did you, oh, sorry, Rose.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a couple of notes that the robocall, it's the automatic thing. So it's like the first step. If they're not registered as attending at, for example, at the elementary school, what is it, 9 o'clock, that it's automatically sent out if they are not there. So the teacher participation is more of a follow-up. The other thing that I just wanted to say was that teachers being involved in this process with chronically truant students, you also have to consider how the teacher is effectively providing, you know, the social emotional learning, that is definitely in, you know, the process with those trauma-based and informed learning. And I would just make sure that the teachers are being provided with professional development to, you know, use some of that time in order to be familiar with, you know, what our schools are facing.
Absolutely, yes.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the great discussion again. Dave, did your questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just leave you with this. We're at anywhere between, our schools have anywhere between a 0% or 0 amount of truancies to 5% of truancies. So we have a range, and it would follow demographic lines that you might be able to draw. And certainly, if that's something in the future you want to hear more about, you'll hear about it from me, certainly when we have cases that come. But I can certainly answer any questions.
I'm very, very sorry. I have one more question.
Okay.
It is about when you were talking about apartments and how, you know, sometimes there's a significant change with folks moving from apartment to apartment, and even within school buildings where they move from one building to another. How is that tracked when it's between buildings? Is it district centralized, or I would just be concerned that, you know, some of the stuff is starting to happen in one school, and then they go to another school, and, you know, that kind of stuff is forgotten or, you know, kind of put to the side.
So they're almost back, no,
Yeah.
they're labeled as non-truant anyway.
Yes.
When you start over.
So I know that, you know, like attendance and stuff is district recorded, but I would just, I don't know, be concerned. And I wonder if there's a process of recording that and us being aware of what that is.
So the process for recording that is in a couple of ways. One, when they move within district, it's great because our teachers talk.
Right.
Okay, so there's that for multiple reasons. But the way we record that is in Power School. There is a truancy tab, and that all these steps get recorded right in that process. So when a student moves, whether it's in our district or to another district that has Power School, I mean, those are our educational records. Also, as part of the educational record are these parent notifications and the plans. Those go into the cumulative folder.
Going back to what Rose said, as far as the how efficient which it does look really great, but the percentage of what we're looking at the percentages, and Katie, you said that you do have,
Yep.
you do keep that, so that would be great it's easily accessible then,
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we
absolutely.
we can look at that.
What is it? What would you
Well, the
like?
percentage of how, like you
Each
said,
step, how each
like
step
how-
is
We don't
effective, like how.
Percentage we have by school, daily, how many truant, chronically,
Oh,
we
okay.
have that.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Okay.
total
But we
big
wouldn't have
picture
by-
versus individualized at each step. So, you know,
many
one
kids
school
see one?
has, you know, it's effective at step 2 and et cetera, but we don't have that. We just have one big.
Yeah.
I think that would be hard again because
of
it's
work.
customized to the student and the family. We might have more meetings. So to say to you at step 1, I can give you anecdotally, a lot of this gets resolved at step one. A lot of it gets resolved. We don't think about it that way because we know those truant situations that persist. That's what Scott and I are talking about, are the ones that persist. I don't talk to Scott about the ones that they come in and it resolves. And we don't have a way to track, like that got caught on step one. But we might have another family that has had step 5. We might have had 5 meetings on them. So I'm not sure how we can say 1, 2, and 3 when there's maybe 5 for this person, 3 for that person. Do you see what I'm saying? But I'm going to think about your question because I think you're asking, how do we know, are we seeing if our practices are effective?
Yeah.
So that's a conversation we can have.
The other question is, do you happen to have the percentage of currently truant students?
Overall, I didn't run the overall percentage for the district, but that's why I gave you the from 0 to 5%.
Okay.
I
I would just be curious, that's all.
can do
we'll
that
have
before
them
the
for
end of
Saturday.
the meeting and tell you what the percentage overall for this.
And one last question, well, I'll probably have more. Sorry.
Rose, you are with us for a reason.
Thank you. Now, is this specific to families? Like the whole family becomes truant, or is it for each student? Like a high school student might not go, but their younger sibling in whatever, 5th grade can get themselves there.
Or vice versa. That's a very interesting question. What I can tell you that I was beginning to notice as I was looking at the data with this is there would be 2 students. I didn't have names. I was just pulling the data raw out of Power School. And I had 2 ID numbers right next to each other. Those are probably siblings because they were alphabetical. And I would see in schools. And I would see that there were 2 right next to each other, particularly in the older grades.
But it's
I didn't
student
notice
to
it in the
student,
other
it's not family.
Okay.
It's student
specific
identified.
to
Yep.
the
Oh, I'm
student.
sorry,
Yes.
yes.
But the siblings are closely watched as well.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, that's just
Same
something.
level.
Yep.
And I know that Power School is different from district to district, like those records are there, and, like Lewiston's is Lewiston's and Auburn's is Auburn's. I guess my other question would be, is that information tracked district to district? Like, if they are truant in Auburn, when they go to Lewiston, is that truancy still, like, transferred?
Yes. So it's transferred again in 2 ways. So what happens with our Power School information is that the truancy, there are some pieces of information from the Power School that get uploaded to Synergy. Synergy? I always, they've changed it.
A centralized database.
Synergy, right? So then, once that child transfers, that is accessible by the receiving school. And then the second thing is the paper cumulative file goes. And so those documents
are put in there. I just know I lose students all the time, and, they go back and forth, and, like, it breaks my heart, and I just want to make sure that they're still getting, what they need and that they're being followed up with, so I'm glad to hear.
Well, we can't always guarantee whether that gets followed up or not, but
Yeah,
that information is passed on.
Yeah, but teachers become, aware of it because they have the direct access to Power School.
Exactly.
Even when they're recording their attendance and et cetera.
Okay, I'm going to run the numbers.
Great. All set? Rose, are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
I truly appreciate your great
I'm
questions.
sorry.
Absolutely. No problem. So the next item on the agenda is under business, and essentially it's sort of almost old business. We are going to bring back the discussion of the DEI phases 1 and 2. When I met with Katie last week, I asked her to put this on the agenda because individually, many of you reached out after we came through with our December 18th meeting and the motion that went through to support the proposals as listed 1 through 4, all 4 of the phases. There have also been constituents who have reached out, pros and cons. And so this is a great opportunity for us to have a discussion, making sure that we are doing things with validity, are doing things that are right for our school system, right for our students, right for our teachers, right for all involved. Have we exhausted all possible avenues? Have we reached out into our communities? So I can tell you that I've heard from, of those of you sitting on here, I did hear individually from 5 of you with concerns that there was a proposal that was brought forth, that was voted on, that after you had time to sort of think about it and be reflective about it, you really questioned whether or not this was the right proposal to accept. So I'm going to open this part up, and as well, I have information from constituents here as well. So I'm going to open this up to discussion for all of us, because we did make a motion to support. And do we want to continue to support that motion, or are we looking at different possibilities? Open it up for discussion, and this does include public participation as well at this point.
I was one of the 5 that didn't, or one of not the 5. I'd just like a quick breakdown so that I understand what's going on.
Sure. So you have, or this was provided for all of us, a breakdown. So a couple weeks ago, yes. December 18th, which seems like a very long time ago, we had both Virginia Durrani and Laura Ligori come and talk to us about some ideas they had around phasing in an opportunity that they thought they think they can provide for the Auburn School Department in a way to address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so some of you are, as you're thinking about this, is this, and I don't want to lead the discussion. I'll facilitate the discussion, but I want for those of you who brought up your concerns, who brought up your worries, this is the time to really start thinking about them and talking about them. So phase 1, really the way it was introduced to us and explained to us was really just, and the description of the terms were on your packet as well, was to just basically do some community listening circles, to do an equity audit, to really think about the landscape of our community, to gather that information, and to begin with key stakeholders. And a lot of us had questions about how these key stakeholders would be identified. The word organic came up for me. I think it's a little bit that's not concrete sequential enough, or it's not concrete enough, I know for myself. I think the other questions that I've heard from many of you and from constituents as well is the work that is presented to us in this amount of phases, do we need something at this magnitude to come in with our students? Or is this something where our teachers through workshop could really benefit from not all of these phases, but simply some more tools in their toolbox when they are presented with a situation that is sort of right in front of them. So these phases are more pre-K 5, it's to build a curriculum, it's to really, if you're looking at all 4 phases, it's really to implement something big, versus is this something where our teachers need some more professional development around? Have we polled our teachers to find out, is this really what they want to do? Do they want more, just it's a workshop time and, give me some more tips and tricks and tools? So those are some things that I've been hearing about. Those are some, and the cost and the price of all of this. Knowing, however, that phases 1 and phases 2 can be supported with no impact to the budget, because we would be using Title IV funding, which Title IV funding does provide for this type of facilitation. So 3 and 4, although in our motion on December 18th, we voted to support all 4 phases, that is something that we have the opportunity right now to go back and visit. So let's open it up for discussion. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing from constituents? What are your questions that came up afterwards? Lay it out there. This is your opportunity to do it. I'm going to start with.
I apologize. The 18th was the meeting that
Yes.
I wasn't here, so.
Yep, go ahead. Rose,
So
and
I don't have
Brian,
this.
you'll follow.
So I would just want to know the cost because I wasn't here and I didn't have that information. That's later on. All right.
Do you have your proposal papers?
I don't have a copy, but he
Okay.
just showed me,
Okay.
so.
So phase one, rough estimate being 16,650, phase two being just about $8,000, so $7,900.
Okay, so we're looking at that total between the two phases, but that would be covered by Title IV is what you're saying?
Under Title IV funding. with
Okay.
No impact to the current budget. This, and being really careful, so there would be some audits in here, and Virginia is here as well, so she can answer. She was part of the proposal, part of, obviously, the 50% of the mastermind behind this proposal. So that is Title IV funded. Part of the questions that I'm hearing, that I heard from several of you, is do we even need phases one and phases two? Is this even the route to go?
From my standpoint, I had questions about this because while we had it brought to us under December 18th, I don't know how much of it's been passed out to parents and how much feedback we may have gotten back from teachers. And it just sort of leaves it a question is, should we be addressing the parents beforehand with this, getting their buy-in to it? Because if you're not going to get parental buy-in with this first part of it, phases 2, 3, and 4 are, waste of money. And so I think that we should be looking at getting this out there to the parents, asking their opinions, bringing this forward, because yes, we're going to bring this out at the school, but my standpoint has always been that you do what you learn at home and you bring it to school. It's not you learn it at school and take it home.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple, because I think clarification, just big clarification. Because and everyone reads things with different perceptions, so I really appreciate the different perceptions. This, because Karen and I sat at meetings that all of you weren't at, so I get that 100%. Answer your question, I think that's what phase one is all about. There's nothing being done to staff, students, parents, at all in phase one, except to listen. That's it. And they're doing, on January 21st, they will be doing a workshop with the Edward Little staff. Okay, they've met with the Edward Little staff. They talked to the department. Virginia and Laura went and met with the EL department heads, and they're planning January 21st. So I see first of all, the reason it was going to be a subcommittee is to have representation from the board, for you to meet with Virginians and Laura, having Shelley Mogul as represented from our office, and other membership that you decide what that could be. Everything is evolving. So the first phase is really sitting with parents and having the conversation about, what do you see, what do you think? Sitting with community members and saying, what are you hearing, what are you seeing, how are we going to improve things? Sitting with students at that. So I saw first phase as totally fact-finding, exactly, fact-finding, getting all the voices at the table, and relying on the experts who have done this in other school departments on what works to get all that information. Take an audit. What are we doing? I mean, we've done a lot of work in the school department, right? So getting all that. So I see phase one really as getting what you're saying, parents understanding it. You're not doing anything, right? Right. Phase two was taking that and deciding, what are you doing? You may decide you are only going to do teacher PD next year. You may decide, no, we're going to do this or that. That's why I found this refreshing to say we're not going to do, they didn't lay out everything that was going to be done to. They wanted to learn and listen and take everyone's perspective and then bring it to the subcommittee to work it through and talk it out, and then bring it to the school committee to talk through and do what I'm saying to you. So the money for next year, and I think we did say that, it's only if money in Title IV is available, or if you allocate some money during budget season. You may say, there's no way we're doing $100,000. we can only do $40,000. And Virginia and Laura have already been told that, is that as they come out of phase 1 and 2, what could they do for X dollars if that was, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to me, the very questions people are asking, I think is what phase 1 is all about, to be honest, for me, from my perspective. And Virginia would have to answer to that.
Follow up. How would, I understand the teachers are easy,
Yeah.
they're a captive audience. But how are we notifying the parents? Are we putting it on the website? Are we actually sending something home?
Great question, because Virginia sent us an email, and I suggested that the subcommittee meet. and ta-
I just want you to be able to have your dialogue.
Exactly.
It's helpful to be able to answer the questions that are here without interrupting your dialogue. I guess is what I'm-
So to answer that, what I suggested in the email is that your subcommittee talk about how will you do this. One, you can invite PTO presidents. You can invite, you could do, and I think I said this, you could do, here's a coffee hour at this times, and put out all call to parents to show up. So there's lots of, I think that's what the subcommittee is going to work on, is how do we get parents' voices?
I think it really boils, in my mind, this really is boiling down to, is this work that after doing these fact-finding missions, that we need to continue on? Is there an issue with the culture in our schools? We don't know the answer to that question unless we do some fact-finding. Now, I've asked Katie if we have people who are here in district who could lead that work, social workers, guidance counselors that could lead that work for us. And my understanding was, at this point, we really do not have people, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we really do not have people in place who could lead that fact-finding type of surveys and questions and community circles and things of that nature.
I mean, we could lead it, but how, then it puts staff in that role, rather than you have people who are listening, taking it, and not having any response to it, not feeling defensive if it became, do you know what I mean? Because if a parent said something and the teacher felt like, well, that's not really what's happening in the school, you have to go with purpose. What's the purpose? If it was, you just want a staff member to run a circle and take notes and not respond, I guess you would have to decide what the purpose would be. But people have a lot on their plates, and to take on this is a huge responsibility.
Karen, you might recall that, excuse me.
Yes, no, go ahead.
When this came up on the 18th, which seems like a year ago.
It does.
I abstained from the vote. I wasn't prepared to vote on this. And a question I raised was, how did we get here? And it's my perspective, and the perception piece has been thrown out there, is that this is providing a solution to a problem that cannot be identified. And I will vote against it. I don't know, I'm new at this, I'm very new, I don't know what Title IV funds can pay for, but for $115,000, if it could pay for another teacher, I'd much rather do that. I don't know how and there's no data that has been provided to me to show me that there's a cultural issue in our schools, or an inclusion issue. So I haven't moved off that spot. I still would like to know, how did we get here? And who decided that there's a culture issue in our schools?
So, or is this a response to the Boston?
Well, that information is given to me past, which I think it's an overreaction. That's just, and it's not based on my opinion, it's based on conversations I've had with people.
So I guess the question I would ask then is, how do we get that data for you?
Well, I think we all need to see the data. I don't think it's just, I would hope it's just not me.
Well, no, for us. How
Right.
do we get that data for us, right? Again, that was something I asked Katie. Can we do that within our own school department? How do we do that within our own school department? And
I think one of a great, potentially an untapped resource in our schools is our students. That if we, and I was thinking even the truancy thing, do we have peer support around these things? We've got two, bright kids on this committee that should be participating in this conversation. That we can't, to get into this seat, I didn't do a whole lot of things in the community, but one thing I said, this school committee spends a ton of money on consultants when we have experts within this, the department. So I have not moved off my spot from December 18th.
So that's why the discussion's been brought up again.
What about, are they going to do those studies like you have to participate? Every child? What if a parent says, I don't want, so I'm going to keep my kid home that day? I mean, is it done in the auditorium? Is it done,
The students it was a survey, my individual survey.
but I
Right,
mean, the
Virginia?
participation in this, is it going to,
Yeah.
is it going to be student by student or the whole, or what if somebody doesn't want to participate? I mean, that's.
I think
It's an
Virginia, do you
anonymous
wanna-
survey.
Yeah, Virginia, if you want to step in. And I do appreciate that we are just having this open dialogue, because I think when the proposal came about, it sounded, lockstep, and it was one of those, okay, I think I should support this. I wonder, it sounds, really well laid out. However, once we've had time to sort of step back and reflect on this and really think about it, it's something we need to bring up again and have this discussion again. So-
And I have to say, and I'm kind of embarrassed about this because, and I know it was our first meeting and there was nerves in that, but honestly, I didn't feel I was voting for the program, and just because I felt I needed more time to really reflect on what it meant and the money and stuff. But I felt like, I guess I thought we were voting on the subcommittee
And
and
not
not
the
the proposal.
Okay.
So I apologize for that, and again, I'm going to chalk it up to nerves and, being the first time up here. But that's why when you were saying that we agreed with this, I thought, wait a minute, I voted yes to a subcommittee so that we could have a
do the
committee to
research.
really do more research and to really elaborate, like you said, Dave, to kind of find out what really, if we need this and if it's worth spending this much money on it. And so I apologize for that.
No, I don't, you don't have to apologize. You voted on a subcommittee to work with Virginia and Laura to help facilitate that so I think.
So I think I
both
was-
things rather than who is going to run the subcommittee.
I think I was
Question.
thinking the subcommittee, and again, this is, chalk it up to something I'll learn now, is to ask more questions. What I thought, or I guess I assumed, which is not a good thing to do, but is that the subcommittee was going to be created as its own entity and not just associated with one thing, is that it was in an entity that we would decide where to go. Like, what, you have great presentation, and there's a lot of great things in there, but I wasn't on that. You know what I mean?
So allowing a subcommittee to vet all potential ideas out
Yeah.
there. What does the Y do? What does Green Dot do? What do we have out there for community resources?
Tree Street?
Tree Street, that's out there. Sure.
Yeah, I
You
guess
can allow
that's,
a
I guess that's what
subcommittee.
I assumed, and so I apologize for that, but.
Go ahead, Rose, go ahead.
I just think a couple of things, just as we're having this conversation, that if we propose, or if we adopt phase 1 and 2, or are we able to adopt just 2 phases versus all of them? Is it like an all or nothing, or?
No.
So, in my opinion, getting the data from phases 1 and 2 under the, not assumption, but under the guarantee that we're going to get Title IV funding, I am 100% on board, because I think it's a good opportunity to us to take advantage of and be able to utilize those fundings that would be available to us at no cost to the district. And then at that point, would we be able to adopt phases 3 and 4 if under that we find, yes, this is valuable information and let's go further, or like, how does that work?
So to me, that would be the work of the subcommittee.
Yep.
So phases 1 and 2, fact-finding and finding out the facts. But we may look at phase 3 and say, this is after talking to our teachers, after talking to our students, the phase 3 is not the way we want to go. Phase 3 is too all-encompassing. Really, the next step we want to take is this. But we don't know that information yet, because we just haven't done that, we haven't asked those questions yet. You know, I have emails from constituents asking simply, is there anything wrong with the culture of the Auburn schools? And asking, have we surveyed teachers, students, and parents to poll those, to poll them, asking about other trainings that have been considered. So in my mind, that is sort of up to, you know, the subcommittee and even all of us sitting here on the school committee to know who can we reach out to that could potentially support us in this work, if this is work we want to continue on based after we find out, you know, the survey goes, if we want to venture down that road.
Well, and I guess my concern was, is this needed? And what degree is needed? Yeah, I fully support if we have a need for
Right.
this, to do what we have to address the issues. But I would like to know what the issue is. I'm sort of like Mr. Simpson. I would want to know what the issue is. I mean, are we addressing a broad range of issues, or are we looking at one or two small issues that might be able to be addressed in another manner?
Anna, you would.
So I wasn't here for the last meeting, so I'm not really sure like what this proposal is and what would the kids have to do, because I did hear that there might be a survey sent out, and I will say to everyone that there are issues with specifics, but that is one question, like, would it be going to the specifics, or would it be going towards everything there? So, what's the student's role in this aspect?
So I've also heard too from, speaking of what's the need, I have heard from teachers that, you know, there are issues that come up and they just want to know how to react to them. Like, what is the most effective way to react to a situation? If you see something where someone is being, you know, racially discriminated or, you know, something like that, what's the correct way to approach that, you know?
So in our meetings that we sat down with Virginia, Laura, myself, and Katie, I kept coming back to, as an educator myself, I just need the tools in my toolbox. If I come around a corner and I see a situation, what is the best way to approach that? I do not have training on some of these bigger issues that are out there. What are the statements that I can make? What are some things that I know will be proactive versus reactive to de-escalate a situation? Because I will tell you that right now, we have teachers turning their heads when they see certain things because they just don't know what to say or what to do. And they don't want to be that way. I am not, by no means am I sitting here saying we are pushing phase 1, 2, please, we're pushing phase 1 and 2, 3. I'm just saying we do have teachers reaching out to us saying, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Well, and I'll just make this comment. I'm the superintendent of schools. I think there's a need, and that's why it's being brought forward. If you're questioning, we don't have needs, that's your question, that's your, but working with administrators, teachers, students, and families every day, we have needs in this area. Every high school, elementary, middle school across the country have these needs because we are society, and that's reflective in our schools. And these are the things we teach with positive behavior sports, we teach in our guidance classes, we teach all day long, and we also need tools. And we didn't want to, as educators, say, this is what we think the issues are. We were trying to be open to the voices and perceptions to get that clarity around those certain things. So yes, I think the survey is to identify many different angles, not to say we're only going to be dealing with racism, for example.
Okay,
But-
I was just wondering what the survey
and
was like,
it's-
what it
yeah.
is, because I wasn't here for last meeting at all, so I'm kind
Right.
of coming into
And
this.
the subcommittee would be looking at that survey, would be working with them about what's going on, and you definitely should have membership on that subcommittee, to have your teacher membership, a principal, a parent, a student, yeah.
And that might be a question for you then also, because we're talking, you know, it's not just the students, it's not just the family, it's the
Right.
teachers. So
Right.
if we did a survey for the teachers, a survey for the students, a survey for the parents,
Right.
and sent it out as part of phase 1, got all that back, then the subcommittee would be
Exactly.
working to do address whatever issues they find, or they, if they found that there were no issues or whatever.
yeah.
Doesn't make any difference. And then the subcommittee would be tasked with moving on
Correct.
to another phase.
There.
Okay?
Yes.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, my name is Peter Elias, and I live at 564 Lake Street in Auburn. I sort of came tonight thinking I was going to talk about the proposal, but it sounds like, and I'm willing to do that, it sounds like, first, I'd like to address the issue as to whether there's a problem. The short answer is absolutely there's a problem in Auburn. Since August of 2017, I've been a certified Green Dot instructor, which means that I've been doing bystander intervention workshops in this community for people in Lewiston, Auburn. We have a problem with what we call power-based personal violence, though we try not to use jargon like that when we're out in the real world. Harassment, bullying, sexual assault, inappropriate language, domestic violence, child abuse, there's a whole host of them. It's not a school-based problem. It manifests itself in the school. But I can't tell you how many times at our workshops we get questions about from teachers or people in those schools who say exactly that. I see these things, I hear about them, and I go home sick because I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. So for the folks who aren't sure whether there's a problem, I can't give you statistics from here, but I can tell you absolutely Lewiston Auburn has a problem, and it shows up in your schools. Talking about the proposal is a separate issue, but I really felt like I had to say something about there is a problem.
I also think that being proactive versus reactive, all of this gets information from our community and what our community needs are. I think that's what phase 1 and 2 really represents, and being able to take that information and use it effectively. One thing that I think is partnering with teachers and the local Teachers Association. I know that there's a grant through the NEA for a substantial amount, up to $25,000. Lewiston received a grant for a substantial amount, similar very much to that, and the grant is for communication and community involvement. And I think that looking at some of these resources to think outside the box that can help cover some of this. We may not spend $30,000 or $37,000 or $78,000 on phases 3 and 4, but we can take those ideas and be creative with what we have in-house, different opportunities for grants and other fundings. We use Title IV for 1 and 2. I think that we can pick and choose and help cover some of these topics with creative funding.
Yep. So it's almost like we are at this. Well, no, I don't want to put any words into anyone's mouth, but I think it's really become down to some fact-finding mission on our part right now.
I also have another question, too, that I thought of after the presentation was, I know you've worked with other schools, but I'd like to know, the data on how effective that was in the other schools, just kind of get an idea.
Well, so Folsom, Virginia, and I'm a parent in the district, which I say that because I also want to just reiterate the need that I see, not only for my own children of what they've just directly experienced, but also from many people that I connect with as a parent. Many parents I connect with specifically who are on the margins. So I'm a biracial woman, and as a woman who engages a lot with communities and communities of color and many different marginalized communities, I've experienced and witnessed and listened a lot for the past couple of years living in the community. And so for me, I am really here and to offer my tools of support in ways to provide it for my own children, but everyone else's children who are here within the district, because I am in other districts and in other places. My primary work, and I can't speak for Laura in terms of her pieces, in terms of the success, my primary work is teaching at the University of Maine Farmington and at CMCC, giving educators these tools. It's the classes that I teach. How do you respond to all of these different scenarios? How do you facilitate dialogues with children, starting at 4, going up through high school? How do you integrate curriculum that addresses why the N-word is the N-word and why women break each other down with the language they use? These are the tools I'm teaching future teachers, that many of which have come to me because they've graduated from UMF, or they're entering into Auburn hires a lot from UMF or CMCC. So from the students I'm teaching, as well as at CMCC, and that many who are graduates from this school district, they also have shared. This is really helpful. We didn't have this happening within our schools. The success that I have received from the teachers that I'm giving, you can ask some of them because they are in the schools, because they've taken classes with me, has been at least very positive of, now I know how to respond. The approach that I always recommend in any way with teachers is to always first do that reflective listening. So it's one thing to respond to an incident in a hallway. It's another thing to also be proactive and think intentionally around what are the tools we are instituting from the start with children and with youth to offer these dialogues of listening throughout the day that's integrated in their social studies curriculum or in these other curriculums where we are responding and reflecting on these topics while also responding. And that is why this approach of let's first listen to the community. We can't make a decision on how to act without listening to the community to direct the action. So for me, that's important in practice. It's best practice when doing work around issues of diversity and oppression. Key leaders, Apollo Freire and any leaders would say you need to listen to the people who are experiencing and who are within your community before you go and make a decision around how you want to respond. I'm only here to offer my area of expertise in how to do that. And how do you sit and do that with people who've maybe experienced it, but maybe aren't trained with the facilitation tools around how to have dialogues, what we're trained in courageous conversations, and how do you have dialogues safely where people can truly speak from their heart and be honest and open and walk through the fear that they may have when sitting with other people that do not agree or think like them. And that is not easy to do if you are not trained in the process of doing that. And so that is the skills that in our time of doing it, all I can say is the research or the reflection I've gotten back was it was very positive, and it also created much more long-term sustainable institutional change versus a fix to a situation and then moving on. It was really, again, like I had said, about a cultural shift around how we are integrating in with pluralistic communities of people coming from many different backgrounds, many different ways of thinking and doing, that now our schools in Auburn are experiencing. So I would say the data that I have from my work this has been very helpful from teachers from the toolbox piece, because that's the piece I'm most offering. I can't speak for Laura's data on all of the places that she has been for the places all around the world. But yes, I would say that it's been very positive and very effective from what I've received, but I don't have any, data I have a lot of surveys that I give out afterwards that I can bring in of what folks have said.
Do you do like workshops for people like that?
Yes, I'm in the Augusta schools, I'm in Lewiston schools doing SEL and the same work within the Lewiston schools. So yes, I would do professional development, and that was in those second, third, fourth phases that we were offering, but this is a cookie cutter, this is the training I'm gonna offer. I am one to say, what do you need? Because what the teachers may say they want or need is gonna be different than what the teachers in Lewiston are telling me and what the Augusta superintendent just told me. It's not, for me, best practice to go in. And yet I have tools to respond to many different scenarios that are impacted by race, trauma, gender, disabilities. But I'm not going to say this is what you need. I want you to tell me. And I feel like I need to listen more to what Auburn is saying they need, which is, for me, what phase 1 and 2 is about.
Can I just say a few things? One, I just want to tell you that I 100% appreciate your passion and advocacy in this, because it's something that's very important. So both of you, that you guys are doing a fantastic job, and I'd love to have more teachers, parents, and community members here to be able to have these conversations. That's something that's very important. Most of us are on this board because we wanted to collaborate with key stakeholders, and that's what we need to do. And I think that's something that phase 1 and 2 really encompasses to be able to have those conversations and identify those issues. What we do with that information later on will affect and will balance professional development that we're already doing and that we already spend money on. It will affect curriculums. There's so many things that this information from phases 1 and 2 will roll into what we are already doing. And, you know, at that point, when we have that information, we can look at applying for grants through, you know, various funding and different opportunities that are out there. I think that spending the money on phases 3 and 4, personally, I don't know if I'm allowed to, you know, whatever, have my opinion. I think that those are things that I would table, and that I think we need the information first, and then we can look at if we need to spend that further. You know, we have a couple of folks here that are here talking about this, and like I said, I appreciate it, but I want to have more people involved. How are we going to know that phases 1 and 2 are going to be effective if we have 5 people in the room trying to join us? Like, I want to have the whole community here. So, and I think that that is important for, again, identifying those issues. Like, we could have, whatever, 100% agree on an issue, but if there's only 5 of us, like those 5 people in that 100% isn't representational of what we are trying to solve.
Right, right, absolutely. And I think it's also important to say that, you know, and this would be the work of the subcommittee, is that, yes, we have this information, but we are not lockstepped into, just because we have thought phase 1 and 2 have really going to serve us well, that we are not lockstepped into phases 3 and 4. First of all, we would have to provide the funding for that, and if we decide we do not want to provide the funding for that, then phases 3 and 4 look differently, right? We need to first find out what it is we need. I think that's really what it comes down to. And I would ask, did this discussion help? Are people feeling like, you know, where they're at right now, they have a better understanding where we're at, where the funding for phases 1 and 2 are coming for, that we have exhausted, or I have asked if we have anyone here available in the Auburn School Department to lead this.
Are we able to put a note on our vote for phases 1 and 2, like if that we choose to adopt it if we receive funding? So, like, not to implement it unless we receive funding.
So at this point, we can amend the motion, I believe.
Yeah, phase 1 and 2, Sue Doris, who does the title grants.
Yep.
It has already put.
We have already received the funding.
Yeah,
for
we
it.
have the funding we're allocating, because we had funding allocated for Steve Wessler's work, so that's shifting to this.
Okay.
And she's reworking the budgets.
Okay.
Title IV cannot pay for classroom teachers.
Yes.
So that was another question.
So I think that was something, maybe Dave, you had asked if we can use Title IV funding instead of following through with this plan. Can we actually get more people and more body, you know, more teachers? And unfortunately, Title IV funding does not pay for that. It doesn't pay for the bodies in there.
Utilized.
Yeah, yep.
Because I think they laid out a vision, but you're driving the ship on the vision.
Absolutely.
So they're here, you know, we're not going to do anything that everyone doesn't agree to. So they just put something together that they're working on, not that, you know, people aren't going to be involved in giving feedback, and it's an ebb and flow. It's not a hard, phase 1 says they're doing this, that's exactly what they're going to do. It may shift and change. No, that's not what we're going to do. I mean, I don't hear them saying, if you don't do that, we're not going to work with you. Right. So I think you're driving the ship.
I mean, I'm a parent, so I'm not going anywhere in the sense that, and I'm not attached, my focus here is not, I'm a consultant, I want to get a consultant. I'm coming forward because as of right now, honestly, I'm getting asked in a lot of places throughout the state to do this work because Maine and various places is needing this. And so, and it within UMF in terms of being trained around these topics and how to facilitate them and how to give teachers the tools around them. So I just happen to live here, and my intention is how do I support my own community while I'm being asked by other communities to support them in the work. And feel also I have this opportunity of connecting with many parents and also coming from the belief of, yes, you all are driving this ship when it comes to this into this process. That's the only way that is best practice.
Virginia, can I ask you what reactions you have received once your proposal became made public? What
So
types of-
the reactions that I have received have been very, like, relief. Parents very excited and actually being like, when can I work with you? When can I start talking to you? It feels like it's a blessing. One parent was like, it's so timely that you're now living here, to be honest, that we're now ready to work with you. These are different neighbors. These are many new American communities that I've been working with for many years, living in other places in the state. These are students that I am now teaching in schools that have come out of the schools who have said, can I help out and get involved? This is how the Bates student found me and was like, I've been in Edward Little for 4 years, and this is what she sees through her lens as a woman of color, and said, I want to do this research, can I do this work with you? So I've only gotten nothing of parents saying, we're very excited about having a space at the table to offer our ideas, to share what we are thinking, what we've experienced, and how we can be involved. I think that was what was the biggest thing that they liked, was I was getting them to the table and wanting them at the table in as many ways. And how that's going to get evolved and identified right now has been to identify key organizations or leaders. We've talked about, say, faith communities of places that people attend, who are the key leaders in that, key PTO parents. So starting out small tables of people that then people start saying, these are key leaders, and I'm taking that lead from the subcommittee, or I would be, and student leaders who would say, these are key people that I know want to be involved. Everyone, it's a choice. It is not a requirement. It is an opportunity to be involved in this process for whoever wants to be. But you all would be guiding the process as to who those people are. As much as I've been in the community, I haven't been in here for long, and I don't know who the key people are. Laura has a different lens because doesn't live in the community. So I would be taking the lead from key stakeholders that I started to connect with and research just from living here, who reached out and then said yes. So for one example, Auburn Rising is a very key, big organized group of people who there are leaders within that. So identifying who some of those will be, just like the churches, just like key leaders in the school systems, just like key students, who would then say, now have you reached to these people? So it would be like a bubble that kept blowing out in circles that kept blowing out based on the people we're currently meeting with. That's how we started talking about it in terms of these mini coffee hours that would lead to community listening circles. And we haven't defined how that would be structured yet, because again, we're looking to your leadership on how that would work. But the most important is for me to get as many voices to the table across many different seats of power and experience, across many different marginalized communities. So folks who aren't here in this room, who I am speaking with because English is a second language, or because they're living in their car, or because they can't get out of bed. I want to hear what their voices are and how they feel about these issues, because what they're experiencing for me is linked to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everything we talked about with truancy is directly linked to these topics. So
I'm going to go Dan and then Peter.
I had a little concern is, are we following our own policies now, like bullying? Are we, should we update those? Would that help before?
Michelle, as our policy sort of.
I personally hear a lot of complaints about that, especially bullying.
I
That
agree.
it doesn't get taken care of and it doesn't get fixed.
Yep. And so is it then escalating into?
I've personally had it.
Yeah, you'll want to look at policy. You and I have had conversations about the bullying policy.
And it just seems like it doesn't get fixed, so I think that festers.
I completely agree with you, and I think using this process would be a good opportunity for that fact-finding to see how we can make it effective. I think that is definitely something we should keep in mind.
So if we have policies in place and these policies in place are not being effective,
Right.
then how do we check and adjust and move along?
And I'm almost wondering if we should fix the policy first.
Well, that's one finite thing. I mean, the bullying thing, if there are things you need to be communicating, I know you're very good about doing that.
Yeah.
So, leading people that are talking to you to make sure, they're touching base with the school and they're using the bullying report form, those type of things. They're things that we can review with all of you. I mean, that could be an agenda item, just talking about what we're doing and so forth, and, but yeah, this work doesn't have to wait for that.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They can be
But
going
it's
on.
directly affected by that, I believe, because that just
It would be impactful.
pulling in a different way, you know?
Yeah,
It could
and
be-
you're
It
exactly
could
right.
be anything, really.
Yeah.
That, I think will
Bullying
come
could
up
be a
at,
wide
that,
range.
I think that will come up in the fact finding, you're
That's-
right.
yeah, That's probably
Yeah.
the biggest
Peter.
offense.
Yeah,
So,
it's good.
as a point of information, in terms of data gathering, before Green Dot came to town to do a community program, we had a 4 full-day process of focus groups in both Lewiston and Auburn collecting information. I don't know if that's come across your desk at all, but a lot of that data was collected about what happens in the community and where. So as part of the process, you should probably explore getting some of that information or involving some people there. The second has to do with the policy in the bystander intervention literature, if you will. It's fairly clear that in general, policies are reactive and don't change culture. They are an administrative, punitive, although they try not to be punitive, response. And they almost never move the needle in terms of changing the culture. Whenever you have somebody saying or doing something hurtful to somebody else, you've got those two individuals, and you're likely to have anywhere from a couple to 20 or 30 other people who are bystanders who don't do anything. Those are the teachers you are talking about and the people we hear about that's why they come to our workshops, because they've seen these things. That's why I got involved, because I didn't do anything one day in Home Depot and was miserable about it for weeks. Who want to know what to do, and it's that bystander power over the long haul that has been shown as one of the few things that's been shown to change culture and change community behavior. You can do lots of programs that change attitudes on surveys, and there are many programs that will tout that as success, but the number of programs that can show you a decrease in sexual assault or a decrease in bullying or harassment episodes is quite small, and they almost always focus on the bystander. So, giving the teachers and other students, I think Anna would probably be able to tell you that it's very hard when you're a high school student. That's a long time ago, but I still remember. It's very hard as a high school student to know what to say and how to say it without worrying about making it worse for them or yourself. That's not easy. So that's where I would think that you should be looking for focus. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to argue about the specifics in the proposal, phase 1 and phase 2, because I don't think you're there yet. I think you're talking about, let's get on the bus and see where it takes us, not
Right.
how many seats you have on the bus, or who sits in which seat, or what road you take. You don't know where you're going yet. Don't worry about those things. Get the process started. But be very public about the stuff you're doing with the subcommittee, so everybody and their sister has a chance to contribute.
Absolutely. Transparency will be very key for this moving forward. Absolutely. Because I will come back to a point that I have been very adamant in trying to make. We don't want to do anything to teachers and to students and to our community. We want to do things that are in the best interest for our students, for our teachers, and for our community. And as an educator myself, there's no more that can be piled on top of my head. So if this is going to create a culture and an atmosphere, or attempt to create a culture and an atmosphere that is very proactive and a good learning experience for all of us, and a good community experience for all of us, then let's try.
So I'm bouncing off your, being an educator and putting more weight on you is something that's very difficult. I do want to go off of Dave's point that looking at phases 3 and 4, the funding of that being effective by putting additional teachers on staff to help alleviate some of that. So I really do appreciate where your heart is coming from, because I think recognizing that and understanding that is something that's very important to everyone, to really acknowledge that to help alleviate some of those issues, so that teachers can be completely effective and be able to put their hearts into teaching versus having to be clogged up with administrative tasks.
Thank you, Rose. Okay. Did this discussion help to clarify the proposal of phases 1 and 2?
do we, at this point, on our December 18th, we made a motion to support all 4 stages of the proposal. At this point, it makes sense to me to go back and potentially amend the proposal, amend the motion, so that we are looking to then support phases 1 and 2 with Title IV funding, do the fact-finding, and then not even think about 3 and 4 right now, but to support phases, the proposal of phases 1 and 2.
the motion was, just,
Did
you look it up from last
The
week?
motion was to support the proposal as presented.
Okay.
And to create a diversity, equity, and inclusion school committee subcommittee.
You could say maybe the motion to,
So the motion to support proposal phases 1 and 2.
Right.
And to create a diversity, equity, inclusion school committee. Okay.
So I have one more question.
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as asking people to be honest, and, you know, there's definitely been a barrier there.
Yeah,
Because people are afraid to maybe say exactly how they feel. They don't want to say anything negative. And a lot of people feel that by saying there's an issue, that it's a negative impact. And which I don't feel like. I think if we don't get to the root of the problem, we're not going to be able to fix it. And I think in order to do that, I feel, and from feedback that I've gotten, that people just don't want to be involved because they don't want, is this going to be, I guess when you're polling people and you're asking people, is it going to be in a way that no one has any idea who it is? You know, when you say, I'm going to poll, you know, I don't know, Fairview, and what, you know, where do you
yes.
teach? What grade do you teach?
No.
Well, there's 3 teachers there.
The
First, you can
equity
figure out who it
audit,
is.
so the equity audit, which again, Laura's not here she can answer any questions, you can email her to do that piece, but as far as I know, which is more of the specific surveys for teachers, is anonymous, and it's more gathering, overarching, what is working, what are you all doing, that's great. You all may be ahead of the game on, say, some of your policies, or some of the techniques or the tools they have, and where are their gaps. So I think in that arena, it's anonymous. The listening circles or the coffee chats are going to be more face-to-face, and that would be an opportunity for people to choose to come or to not come. And then offering in those opportunities of the listening circles, we talked about having a place for people to like sign in to like a chat that they can be like anonymous maybe, but send in their feedback first if they can't attend or they don't want to do face-to-face. So another electronic approach to giving information. So we're trying to provide a lot of access and different doorways in for people who need the anonymity. But what I also heard a lot is there was a lot of healing that people were wanting to do, to have what I listened to of people saying in this community of living here for this many years, we haven't had a real dialogue around the changing demographics that have happened here. And that has really been something that has impacted me as a parent or seeing this coming up in the schools. So sitting and listening and reflecting as to what an opportunity and what the challenge maybe has been, how do we sit face to face and build relationships that way while also doing it this way? So I think it's going to be a variety of pieces for you to know, but honoring the feel, because people have shared the same thing with me.
Yes, because I think that's really important for the,
absolutely.
and it's, I think, I think it's very important for it to be anonymous and for people to feel comfortable with the fact that it is, and that there's no way of figuring out who is saying what. And I think that's when people are going to be the most honest. Because I know for my sake too, like, we do things at work, and sometimes I always think they can figure out who it is. They can figure out who this is. There's only one of me in this department. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and that of course curtails my response. I'm not as honest because I know that it could.
Well, and can I just say, for me, this is why partnering with someone from the outside, this is where there is a benefit, because her doing the equity audit and reading all of that piece, that's going to be part of Laura's work, whereas she and I are going to facilitate the community pieces, but I'm here trying to build relationship in the community anyway. That's what I want to do. So that's a different piece of gathering, but the surveys and the teachers who want to do that anonymously, she's not going to know who any of these players are because she doesn't live in this community, and there's a general just anonymity because of who she is, and that for me is the benefit of partnering with someone in the community where I'm building relationships in a different way. She's from outside of the community. And for me, that makes this work even more authentic and integrous, to provide that safe voice, I guess.
So I just want to say a significant note to your views that I think that a lot of us are here because we wanted a fresh start, and I think that the community recognized that we put some new faces so that we can collaborate, and I think that this change is amazing. So, that's how they voted. That's how they wanted it to happen. So I think with this new start and this idea of collaborating is going to be something that's really going to help those conversations and be honest and help heal the community, which is something that we have struggled with.
I think they want to know that we've done our homework, that we are not rubber stamping anything, that we are watching our wallets, that we are watching our taxpayer monies to make sure that they are being spent in the
Sufficient way.
in the most sufficient way and in the most, lots of fiscal responsibility and integrity in there, absolutely.
And I think utilizing like Title IV funding is something specifically to that. We're able to collect that data and it's not costing the district anything. So that's definitely something important to note.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm about to close discussion. Yes?
I would like to just say that maybe I provide a different balance to this conversation. I live in data. I don't make a decision at work that is not driven by data. And so I respect, I believe that, I guess there's data out there. I'd like to see it. I would just like to see before we, because again, I sit here and I say, okay, this is great. How did we get here? Where is the data? And it's all, and with all due respect, it's all anecdotal. And so I'm going to abstain from any vote, but if there was data, I will do whatever is necessary to help any child in this district.
I also just wanted
Yeah,
to,
and I didn't get we have incident data, but some of it is, we would have to scrub it and everything, and because it's personal, but yes, we have incident reports on what causes and things in schools.
again, I just wanted to reiterate that phases 1 and 2 is collecting that data so that we can look at it and, move forward. So that would be something that's important to take into account.
What data are you, specifically, or I guess, because like you said, there is going to be data over there, but what data specifically would you?
Well, so the last time we met, after the meeting, I said, why are we here?
Yeah.
And I heard Boston Globe. That doesn't work for me. It's like I read the article, I'm sure we all did, and I don't think it raises to the level of bringing consultants. No, if there's data to say that, this is a significant issue, at Edward Little High School or at Fairview or Park Ave or whatever, it's like, well, is this the right? So we're gonna, and this is how simply I think sometimes, phase 1 and 2, we're gonna collect data to find a problem, and then we're gonna address the problem. What happens if we collect the data and there's really not, or like many other initiatives, we don't get parental buy-in? They have a thing at the Auburn Middle School, breakfast with the principal, and my wife and I we're there, you know what I'm saying? So, I'm not anti this at all. I'm not anti-improvement or safety for kids. That's just the way I function. It's like, show me the data. Okay, let's make an intervention. So,
Karen, if I might. So I think, David, you're right, and we operate similarly in school. Sometimes the data is anecdotal. It's qualitative data. And so the qualitative data leads you to go look for quantitative data. And I think that's another way to look at it. I don't know if it helps you. In terms of the Boston Globe, that was part of the qualitative data. That wasn't the reason. It was just another source. I think you hear from students, you hear from parents, you hear from community members. That becomes the qualitative data to say something's going on, and we need to go see what that something is before we put a plan into place. So you as a data person are going to go look for the data you need to say, is there an issue? And if there is an issue, what is the issue? So you start with a lot of projects with something qualitative, especially when it's people working with people. I think that lends to it as well. So it's just another way to look at it.
you want to respond to that at all?
No, I'm
Dave, you
fine.
good? Okay, all right. so-
Why don't we make a motion?
gonna
so
say,
you-
I'll
'cause
make
you're
a
gonna have to have
motion.
discussion again.
Motion to amend, or motion to, actually, a
To
motion to.
amend
and a
December
motion to-
18th.
To modify December 18th's decision. Right, it would be a motion to modify December 18th's decision, rather than support all 4 phases of the proposal, to support phase 1 and 2 of the proposal,
And the subcommittee.
and the subcommittee,
With Title IV funding.
with Title IV funding. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Motion is passed to proceed phases 1 and 2.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
waiting this late.
Yes, I just want to put out too, please, if any of you have any questions for me, like, please feel free to email me.
They should
direct-
go to
Actually, I would, right now, I would ask so that, we are funneling information.
Through this-
all-
okay, I just
all
wanna-
through the same channel.
Yeah.
I would ask that if you do have questions, if you do have, thoughts, concerns, you funnel them my way, and then I will funnel them to subcommittee, and I will funnel them
Okay, great.
to Virginia herself.
Again, I think that's a good faith of that collaboration and communication about making everyone aware. So
Yes.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
I want to say that this is really important, and I'm really glad you're doing it, and I hope you realize that no matter how hard you try and how good a job you do, you won't make everybody happy. But that's just the way the world is. Go for it.
And Peter, can you do me a favor, and can you publicly announce when you are offering some of your Green Dot training, so that those people who are following along with us right now, or those people who will view this
How
later
about-
on?
I will communicate with you about how best to do that publicity.
Fabulous. I noticed your name come up in the Lewiston Auburn community. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we have sent out, all of our staff are aware of Green Dot training. All that information went to them last week so that they could sign up for. I do want to make note that at 10 o'clock, if we go past 10 o'clock, you must make a motion to continue.
So right now, we have, subcommittee is what is the next item on the agenda. And at this point, I have gotten questions from a few of you wanting a little bit more information on the subcommittee. So at this point, I would like to make a motion to table subcommittee appointments and add it onto the agenda for next time. I think right now we want to get into some discussion of subcommittees, and it's just, at this point, we've had a lot of discussion going on tonight. So as much as this is important work,
I mean, what would be, how, because some people have already told you.
some people have told, some people have asked the membership of the Auburn, the membership of the Auburn School committees, meaning what Auburn School Department employees are on here, what opportunities are there for the public to be on some of these subcommittees. Also, how can we add, is there an opportunity to add subcommittees? So there are just all these questions that are sort of kind of.
I also requested to be on an additional subcommittee. I wanted to be on the negotiation subcommittee.
Yep. So I want to be able to, in order to make these appointments, I want to make sure that people understand, how can we include the public? Or is the public included on some of these subcommittees?
That's what you discuss at the subcommittee.
That was my,
Okay, all right, but I can.
so that was sort of my
You can-
understanding.
Yeah, all right, so let me. Because if you delay this, you're delaying being on committees that are happening, like we need somebody at Finance Committee. the
Right,
week
so
of
that
the-
would be my question, like wellness is meeting.
Wellness is meeting, so
I'll have to be a finance
policies are on
committee.
heavy hold right now.
Policy's been
There's a
on
lot
hold.
of work you do in subcommittees, so,
Yep. Or how often some of them are to be determined, or like wellness
Okay.
committee meets once a month. But when is that? I don't know if I can add my name to that one because of my own work schedule. So these
but,
were.
yes, okay, yeah, all right, I know what you're saying.
See what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Wellness is from 3:30 or 2:30 to 3:30.
2:30,
So moved.
3:30 is the wellness?
Yeah.
We do you want
Make a motion to go
past-
past
I don't know.
10.
Do we want a motion to go past 10? So moved. Seconded?
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay, let's pound this out. Yes, let's make it happen.
All right.
I can tell you when wellness is meeting, because I just got an email.
What's the question on wellness?
They're meeting February 5th, and it's from 2:30 to 3:30 every time at Auburn Hall.
So is it always on a certain day of the month?
It is not.
No. The group decides at the meeting, right?
Yes, so
They
they'll
will
collectively
decide,
decide at the meeting
right,
what days
because
work,
this
what
has
times
gone
work.
a while.
So let's do,
Said
let's.
February 8th? No. February 5th, then. February 5th?
Is the first meeting, yes. Mike Davis just sent out an email.
Yeah.
Well, you might not be at all the meetings, but if they know you're coming, then they could have asked you, you would have
When
said,
can
I
you
can't
meet?"
make that meet, you know what I'm saying?
In
So,
the past, we have considered when the committee member who's there. Now, I will say that has representatives, that one particularly has representatives from each of the schools.
Right, so it's
So
after school
teachers,
hours.
we have to have a balance in that one. That one is not one that we have, like policy, we have more flexibility of meeting later because there are less teachers.
Okay, so perhaps let's go.
Want me to go one by one?
Let's go sort of one by one. So
Okay.
we have the audit committee.
so the audit committee is not staff. This is a requirement by charter to have an audit committee. And so you have two members, city councils at it, and they have representatives that, Karen, we can talk about, that are appointed by the chair and by the mayor. I mean, there's different people that are on that. That does not involve staff.
Okay.
And that does not meet very often. Faith has been on it, how often, like twice a year? 3 times a year?
3 or 4 times.
3 or 4 times a year. So if you're on it, you'll be notified. You'll be able to weigh in when you want.
Exactly, so that committee, you can, it's flexible what time.
Community Learning Center, that's the director decides the times, and that's the same thing. When,
It's the first
I don't have it there.
Tuesday of the month. My phone just died.
Can you pull up the Google Doc, because we do have it on there.
I think, and these were the issues. Well, I'd love to serve on, first of all, so many of you.
Right.
All of you gave long, long lists of committees that you were willing to serve on. So I think that's just, thank you.
That's awesome, yeah.
I think it would have been easier to collect a
So-
list of what you don't want to serve on.
If Karen had announced them tonight, everybody's waiting to hear who the school committee members are, so that you can be invited.
Okay.
So it's not, okay, so some are set and some are not set, because they're waiting to hear.
Right.
Okay.
And from school committee members, they're waiting to hear, well, I'm not sure if I can add my name
Correct,
to that
and,
list.
yeah,
So
so-
it's sort of this,
So
What
Share
comes
Center
first, the
meets,
chicken or the egg?
Share Center meets the first Monday of the month. And it's in,
Time?
it's in, I don't know the exact time. It's probably around 6 o'clock.
Because they meet after, and there's members of probably the CLC that's part of that,
okay.
okay?
Okay, so community learning, the Community Learning Center Committee is the one that we're not sure of the time when that one meets.
That one will meet, I can tell you time, the date will be dependent on the members.
Okay, so
If
time.
They'll meet at 4 o'clock.
Okay?
Which one was that?
CLC.
CLC.
CLC, okay.
Okay.
The
Cur-
curriculum committee,
How
she.
often?
Oh,
Probably 3
says
times a
2
year.
to 3 times a year, yeah.
Okay. Okay, curriculum committee?
The curriculum committee, Shelley meets as a need basis, so like she's waiting to hear who the committee members are, because she has a math curriculum she would like you to look at. So when she hears, she'll invite you to that, and then you can talk.
It's flexible, the time.
So I was asked to be on that, and I'm 100% on board. I would just ask to review the continuity over the district to have similar curriculums throughout the building. I guess that would,
Well, that's what you would discuss.
That's
at
what
the
you would
yes,
curriculum.
so
discuss at
yes,
subcommittee.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you
Yep.
talk about that. She's already talked to the teachers, so if a teacher isn't there, she's already gathered the data from the teachers about the math program,
beautiful.
okay?
Okay.
But she'll let you know, like, once she makes the appointments, you'll know, she'll set up, okay.
So DEI, at this point, DEI has not been, except we know we want the committee, has not been established of dates, times, any of that, how often it's meeting. That one has not been, that one can be set by the people who are on the subcommittee.
Right,
Okay.
and Adam, when were you hoping to have a finance committee meeting?
So we most recently set those for the Thursday before the second meeting of the month, which is when the finance report is presented, and we'd been doing 3:30. But we can be flexible on that. It meets once a month.
Okay. Negotiations and superintendent eval.
So the superintendent, so negotiations, which is your main focus right now, We will set negotiations when the team is ready. We have not been notified by the union. Well, we were notified in a general sense. We haven't discussed starting that yet.
Okay.
Okay? So that's the one that's due right now, and then next year you have 3 contracts, and then the year after you have the teacher contract. So the teacher contract is not next year, it's the year after.
Can I just request to be on that committee? Like, is that possible, or?
Everybody weighs in and she
Everybody, so
decides.
we choose as a group? Okay.
No,
Karen
actually, I
appoints.
appoint.
You appoint, okay.
Yes, I appoint based on your, yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay, the building committee,
The next meeting is January 28th we start at 6 o'clock, 5:30.
5:30 for,
I think it was
5:30 for subcommittees, 6:30
5:30
for
for
regular
subcommittee
meeting.
and 6 o'clock for the board.
okay,
Okay? Parent advisory, the date is there, January 27th. And at
And
what
that's
time, Michelle?
6 o'clock
6 o'clock?
to 7:15.
And policy, Michelle's been waiting to hear who it is,
Ready,
so
anxious.
then she will,
no time, you'll be flexible with whoever.
correct,
Absolutely.
that's
Okay.
flexibility.
Okay,
Share Center, it says that, meets first Tuesday of the month at 6. Superintendent search, that will be determined. Right.
Yeah.
Transportation appeal as needed, and that's usually met, Adam sends out to who's on that, we have an appeals. Those are very rare because normally I try to solve the problem before it gets there.
Well, that's the goal.
Yeah.
We
So-
haven't met this year, just as an example.
Yeah, we haven't met, but we try to do it at the lowest level so it doesn't get to the transportation appeal. And then this committee, you just heard when that is. Okay?
okay.
So Karen needs to know, and then she's going to appoint. You may not get what you choose, you may get what you choose.
Right. So based on, I'm hoping, some of you may have kept track. I do have, based on your request, I do have school committee members, and I have nominated, or will be appointing at least 2 school committee members to each subcommittee, simply because if one school committee member is not able to attend, that hopefully the second school committee member can attend. I know in the past there's been one, but then sometimes there's been some, I can't attend. So I am ready to appoint, and so I have going right down the list. If you cannot serve on this committee that I am asking you to serve on, please let me know.
Can I just ask, how often is the parent advisory committee meet?
Right now, we're meeting monthly.
Monthly, okay.
That means monthly, okay.
I might not be able to handle if it's an every week thing.
Oh, yes, I can just send it to you.
We'll make it right.
I can send it to you as well.
Okay, yeah, if you send
Okay,
it to me.
so I'm going to start from top. So at this point, I would like to appoint to the Audit Committee, I would like to appoint Faith and Brian Belknap to continue. I believe you have served on that committee in the past, and I'd ask that you continue to serve on that committee. Community Learning Center Committee, where it is so tied closely with the youth of our community. Dave Simpson, I am appointing you to the Community Learning Center Committee. I think your strengths will be very well utilized there. Curriculum Committee, I have appointed myself and Rose to Curriculum Committee, seeing as that is sort of our strengths and our wheelhouses there. Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, I'm going to ask that I appoint Dave Simpson to that committee, as well as Pam Hart to that committee. Okay. Finance Committee, I have asked Brian Carrier, as well as Dave Simpson to represent on those committees. Thursdays before the second meeting of the month. Negotiations, Faith and Brian Belknap to continue serving on on that committee. The building committee, myself as well as Brian Carrier to serve on that committee. Brian Carrier, can I appoint Brian Carrier to?
I'm just saying, city council has 2 appointees there. That's up to you, I guess.
They do already have 2 appointees.
Yes, city council already has 2.
Tanya, well,
They do.
Who was the second one? Holly?
Pam.
Holly, Dave is off, so I don't know if you've talked to the mayor.
Was my okay.
I would hate
Yep,
to.
no,
if they-
I'm okay with
okay,
that.
okay.
I'm okay with that. Pam, can I ask you to serve in the building committee?
Yeah.
Okay. Parent Advisory Committee, Rose, can I ask you to serve on the Parent Advisory Committee as well as Brian Belknap? I believe that was a previous appointment for you or when you've attended in the past, so I'm going to ask that you please continue on that one. Policy Committee, Dan Poisson, would you serve on the Policy Committee as well as Brian Carrier, would you please serve on Policy Committee? Share Center Board meets the first Monday of the month, and they do ask as part of that we do send a representative. So I would like to appoint Rose to that one as well as myself, if between the 2 of us, one of us can attend that one. The Superintendent Search Committee, and this one I am going to delegate to myself as chair as well as Dave as co-chair. That does not mean that you are not part of the superintendent search. That does not mean that at all. You are very much a part of all of the search for the new superintendent. However, to spearhead the committee, chair and co-chair will take that one on. Transportation, Brian Belknap and Dan Poisson. Wellness Committee, if the time can be adjusted so that Pam can attend those meetings with her medical background, I would like to appoint Pam Hart to that one. And I believe we've got them all.
I can do the 2:30 to 3:30. I just can't do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But I could do Tuesday and Thursday.
Is that all of them? Okay. So I need a motion to approve subcommittee appointments.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Okay, motion is passed. All right, let's just move along quickly. Let's get us all home and into bed. Upcoming meetings. Katie has gone through all of our upcoming meetings. You know that we are coming up, we have our retreat this weekend. You have an agenda for the retreat, so you know what we'll be talking about. You know we have a committee workshop only on the 15th to hear from the same firm that Lewiston hired when they went through their superintendent search.
Adam, what was the name of that firm again?
BWP.
Yes, BW.
They'll be presenting via Zoom.
Yes. And January 22nd, we have a workshop for the public on the new Edward Little project, and then a regular meeting at 7. January 29th, workshop, and then a school committee meeting. So basically, we are here every Wednesday night.
On the 29th was a placeholder for the new superintendent search.
Yep.
So if you don't need that, you won't have a meeting. So you'll
Okay.
decide that as you come out of these 2 meetings.
We
whether-
will. That could potentially
Yeah,
be
so
an
that'll just be a
opportunity.
workshop at 6 o'clock for
Yep.
superintendent search only.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Future agenda items, I had at some point written subcommittee appointments as a future agenda item, but we've just been able to do that here.
You got one,
I
Karen.
had put on future, sir.
Yeah, I'd like us to put on a future agenda item to talk
Absolutely.
about adding a new subcommittee for technology.
Okay, absolutely.
And at least have the discussion, whether we add it or not, will be up in the
Yep.
air, but to have a discussion of whether it's needed or not.
Yep. Absolutely. There's a lot of things coming down the line with technology.
Exactly.
I think that was a very good suggestion. Any other
And you're going to
future-
get information at the retreat, so that might fold right in.
Okay. Any other future agenda items that you would like to see added? None? Okay. Any requests for information for upcoming meetings?
I do, all I want to say before we close is if you get something in the agenda or you missed, like Rose, to help you out, don't hesitate to call me, like, Katie, could you just, I need a little more, or I need this information for that meeting to help me with whatever the decision. I don't want you to feel like you have to wait till the meeting and then I don't have it. So don't, if you get an item, say, geez, I hope we're going to get X, Y, and Z, and send it to Karen and I, then I can prepare for that. So just to make you aware of that.
So for information, I just wanted to make sure for the clean energy, that we will get all of that information. I don't have to request that.
No, because I heard all that.
Yeah,
We've got
okay.
all that. No, we're good.
She wrote it in her notebook.
I've got it in my notebook.
Yes. Pam just asked, when do we potentially, like, if we want an item added onto the agenda,
that would be something that you just communicate through.
Send it to
Yep,
Karen and I,
yep,
because we
yep.
meet every week.
Yep, okay. All right, everyone. Can I
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
So, second?
A second? All in favor, we're out.
I got this in my mailbox.
Thank you, everyone.
I got it.